Hi, guys, and welcome. I am Björn, and this is.
I'm Tastygraph, and this is Game Design Book Club. Woo!
Almost a good intro.
It was
I,
a good intro. I liked it. And I've been told by Ladygraph that I need to do more of this. Look straight into the camera
is it
and
because I look
like
into the camera?
connect. Oh, am I lagging or something? For a moment there, I saw that it said video connected and it was orange. So I hope we're not lagging.
No, actually, it's quite good. Let's see. It'll
Good.
it'll start lagging at some point. Now you can see me
No.
soon on the stream. That's. Are you watching?
Yes. I'm always. That's the only way I can see your camera. So whenever I'm talking to you, I'm talking to a 10-second old video feed of you, but I'm hearing you live. It can be a little bit confusing sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It is. Um, Luckily, you can still hear me live. That would be confusing if you heard me also 10 seconds with a 10
Yeah,
second delay.
let's just say there would be no book club if I had to have 10-second delay on voice. That would be weird.
I was once
Hello, Super
producing.
Jesse and Microlight.
Exactly. Welcome. And also, oh, there was Microlight. Oh, I was thought there were three people chatting, but there was only two. Um, I was once producing a stream. It was work related, but I was producing a stream to Africa, and they wanted to have like where they could do questions and answers, and the delay between the video was 5 minutes. and,
Oh,
and it was like, this is not gonna work.
nah.
Please, can I have some
That's just
questions?
harsh.
Like then it took 5 minutes for them to know that they're now allowed to ask questions, and
Yeah.
then they asked the question. Then it would take 5 minutes until they got the question. It's like just sitting there 5 minutes, being like,
Yeah. So it's literally like you say something, it takes 5 minutes before they receive it, then they respond, and it takes another 5 minutes before you receive it back.
yeah, exactly. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
that's like playing old school shooter games in the 90s with really crappy latency. Like, oh, it's fine. I can play sniper. I only have 600 ping. That's like, 1.2 seconds before you get the results of your shot. It's like, don't worry, you just have to lead. If someone's running, you just have to shoot like 7 meters ahead of him, and you need
Exactly.
to calculate his angle.
That's the reason I suck at games these days. I'm just used to the lag.
Yep.
That's my
I
excuse.
kind of know the feeling. I use that as an excuse as well, but I have gotten used to shooting where people are instead of leading in front of them. But I actually do better in shooter games where you don't have hit scan, but you have projectile based shooters where it has to travel. Because then I can like shoot ahead of them and I tend to hit.
Mm.
It's
I would
just,
say a lot of games have that these days, though, don't
it
they?
really depends on the style of game. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's faster to send an email. That is true. It is faster to send an email than have a 5 minute delay on a video chat.
Mhm.
So, today we're gonna discuss or go through a bit of tips how to create a story in your
Yep.
game. How to make it better, I guess. Well, I guess the whole book is about how to make your game better, not how to make the game.
Yeah,
So,
it's about how to improve your game, and the first chapter kind of goes into depth about what stories are, and it also tries to like debunk the myth about how stories in television are not as effective as stories in games, which I found a bit interesting because and he said something along the lines of let me see if I can find it. He says, sadly, it seems to spring up weed like in the minds of each new generation of novice game designers. The argument generally goes like this: interactive stories are fundamentally different from non interactive stories because in non interactive stories, you're completely passive, just sitting there as the story plods on, with or without you. At this point, the speaker usually rolls back his eyes, lolls his tongue, and drools to underline the point. In interactive stories, on the other hand, you are active and involved, continually making decisions. You're doing things, not just passively observing them. Really, interactive storytelling is a fundamentally new art form, and as a result, interactive designers have little to learn from traditional storytellers. I wouldn't say I agreed with how the new designer is, Lily Bite says, Tasty Bjorn is making faces at you. Thank you, Lily.
I was
know.
making faces with him. I was acting out the text he was reading.
Yeah, acting out. Yeah, but my point here is that I kind of, I'm not 100% with the new designer, but I have had sort of that feeling where interactive stories in games are different, much more different than traditional stories, and that, you know, there's not that much to learn from them. But as he presents his arguments about how a listener or a viewer on a non-interactive story is making decisions, like thinking, what will happen next, what should the hero do, you know, where did this thing go, don't do that, don't open the door, or, you know, like when you're watching a horror movie, you're kind of like yelling at the screen going, don't run to the car, you can't, you're gonna drop the keys on the way, or you're gonna stumble or something, you know. So it's a different form of interaction, and we are kind of making decisions and thinking as we're watching these things. So this chapter kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to the story element, because I'm kind of like I don't like stories in games.
Yeah, I think that's why this is going to be an interesting chapter for us to go through, because you don't enjoy so much story-based games. So we have kind of both. I don't say I love story-based games, but I do like them. So we can have a lot of discussion and about what you found and how you see things compared to how I see things. There's nothing right or wrong in it. It's just different aspects. Like he says here, even in the chapters, that, you know, there's designers or even players who, you know, rather have more gameplay, and then there's the ones that have more story. But I would like to comment on that quote, like that kind of scenario he built. And I think a lot of that discussion and that kind of attitude that, you know, game stories have nothing to do with traditional stories comes maybe from that at some point when you were making games, you had to defend yourself against the fundamental or the fundamental art of creating stories, and then it becomes kind of a pushback, like, hey, we have a lot of things that you don't know, and you kind of push back. I don't know how to explain it, like trying to kind of pull them away from each other, that they like again, if you want to make a very story rich thing and you put it into a game, it's not going to come across as a movie. If you want to make a movie, you should make a movie, its own media, and it excels at building stories of a certain type. If you just try to cram that into a game, you will fail, because it does bring new elements, right? Like gameplay, and you can't really control what the viewer sees all the time, etc. And maybe that's why this kind of opinion has come across, is that where you're gonna go too much in the opposite direction, where you're like, oh, it has nothing to do with how non-interactive storytelling works, which I definitely disagree, because even the interest curve thing is something that's a fundamental thing of non-interactive storytelling. It's even more important, like if you make a trailer or if you make something like that. Whereas in interactive storytelling, it still needs the same thing, but you're less in control. Let's see here.
And Microlight says, for me, games are mostly story. I don't like games without story. Okay, Football Manager is an exception. But then again, Football Manager is one of these games where there could essentially be stories for you to retell in that game, because you could say that you played a tournament or something, and then you thought you were going to lose a match, but then one of your players that you didn't expect would be good, he actually turned out to be good, and he scored a point, and you can retell this story to one of your friends, Microlight. So this is actually a game that has sort of an emergent story, and they also cover that in the book, so we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah. But yeah, my point was just that the passive entertainment kind of, or whatever, which he calls it.
The myth of passive entertainment.
Exactly. That it's, of course, like he says, it isn't passive, but also that we kind of had game designers and game developers had to defend themselves from that point of view, because they sometimes when you talk, because they have a long tradition of 100 years, they can say like, this is how you build a story, you're not following it. But then we as game developers have to follow kind of a different, we still have to adhere to some of the fundamental rules, but at the same time we also have to make exceptions, like
Yeah.
when if you have something that's very, very story based and they take away the control from the player, and you kind of just see a cinematic but still in the game world, and that there's nothing that most of the time there's nothing that annoys a game like a player more than to lose the control of his character. It kind of pulls you out of the immersion where you suddenly realize you are not the character anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's when you're going with the string of pearls style story, where you have, it basically looks like a string with a bunch of pearls, and the pearls are the area of the game where you are free to move around, and then you get to the string part where you're watching a cutscene and it just leads you on to the next pearl that's a round sphere that you can move around and do stuff in. And that's like the string of pearls method.
Yeah, but of course the string of pearls can be like you said, a cutscene. So it could be told, like in Witcher, maybe it's from a camera point of view that you see your character. Yeah. Whereas then taking over the character, like let's say in a first-person shooter, something, your camera starts moving on its own.
Yeah, but the point of this, like the string of pearls method, is that it always ends at exactly the story point that the creator designed. So it's like it's a linear story where you get something and then you can do stuff, and then you get something and then you can do stuff, and you end up at the spot where the creator wanted the story to be.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff in chat. Maybe we should
yeah, first off, I could though thank Thriton for the follow. Welcome to the company of Game Devs. Cheers, dude. Yep. We're staying hydrated thanks to you.
Yes. Sponsored. Thank you for the follow.
This drink was sponsored by Triton.
It was indeed.
That would be an interesting way to say it. But yeah, you're right. Like, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Lilybite says, I used to love games with stories, like adventure games. Now I hate games with stories. I need freeform emergent gameplay. And I'm very much the same. And I think it's because I'm around the same age. I grew up on action games, and then at some point, adventure games went from text-based to visual graphics. And then I played a lot of point-and-click games, and I played a lot of the early Sierra adventure games like King's Quest, Police Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, don't tell my mom, please, and Hero Quest, or Quest for Glory, as it was later renamed because Games Workshop had a sissy fit. And now I'm like, nah, I don't have the patience. It's just a story, I just want to play Sandbox or something. Mr. Creation says, oh my God, how old are you? I am 39. I turn 40 next year.
I'm a bit younger, but not as young as you think. At 32. But yeah, I think that's actually an interesting concept. Like, I think it's because not that we like less story, it's because back in the day, the games either had a story or then they were just gameplay in a way that you could still have emerging gameplay, but not at the same amounts as these days. That because you have so much more tools and engines and things you can use, you can make so much more engaging games, and the story kind of evolves and emerges from that. I'm 43. 42. All right. No, he wants to make you into a question, sir. But yeah, but the string of pearls, like he even later on says, like the Telltale games, right? With Wolf Among Us and what is the other one?
I don't think those games were created when he wrote the book that I have, because I have first edition and Bjorn has second edition.
Exactly. I'm younger, so I have a newer edition. No, it's kidding.
In my book, he uses games such as The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon to explain about Real World Method 2, the story machine.
Yeah, I think he does the same there. But then for the string of pearls, he doesn't mention it here. It's actually later on. That, for example, it has evolved this whole string of pearls where it's still using this method, but it's so much more complicated that Telltale Games, for example, has kind of, for that art form, perfected the whole kind of how to have the interaction part and then the cutscene part where it's almost invisible to the player. And then even the cutscene part might be interactive.
With a quick time event where you just want to punch someone in the face for putting quick time. I really, really hate quick time events, but I know that a lot of games are kind of starting to bring them back. It looks like Telltale Games are doing it as well, but
But I think the difference there is like usually when you have QuickTime, and again it takes away the control from you. But here it actually does more like Heavy Rain or stuff like that. That you actually it's kind of part of the gameplay where, for example, if you have a fight between two characters, it does do the classical way too. But it also has stuff where, for example, you're fighting someone, and then you have to smash the X button hard enough for you to overpower the opponent. If you fail, it'll lead to one direction, the story, and the other one to, like, you will either beat the monster you're fighting or lose to him, and then the story evolves from that.
yeah.
So it's not as annoying because it has this interactive element. But did we have our question?
Yeah. Upstark TV says, so what would be your approach or suggested approach to somewhat solve the problem of the lose of patience in those games? So that would be a question related to where I said, I don't like story games anymore. I lose my patience. And that's a really hard one because the thing is, I don't care about the characters and stories. I don't care about story in a game as such. And I think that I can't really come up with a solution to that because it's just a case of me not wanting to play a computer game in order to experience a story. I love movies.
Yeah.
So when I want to experience a story, I watch movies, and I know that Bjorn used to, I don't know how much you do, but used to do a lot of book reading and reading stories. So I think it's a case of me getting my stories from films, and then when I play games, I just want to do what I want to do. I very, very rarely want to do the stuff that the game allows me to do. It's like I play Destiny 2. My spec in this game is a melee puncher dude. So I'm basically like a necromancer that walks around and palms people in the face and eats their hit points. And everyone else in the game runs around playing with rifles and shoot stuff, and I enjoy just punching things. If the game forced me to play in a specific way, I wouldn't play it. And it's kind of the same with the stories. It's like, I don't save that guy. I don't care about him or that character. I don't care. And I rarely care about those things.
Yeah, the thing is, like, for example, for example, movies in themselves, I think have in a way gone backward, but also gone forward. There's so much more amazing movies. Like, just looking at the amount of Marvel movies coming out every year. Not saying they're all like masterpieces of storytelling, but there's so much there, and you don't have to do as much work as in games. Like, for example, when you look back at like all the Mass Effect series, which then had, and he even discusses this in the book, like the multiple endings thing, why it fails kind of in the end. And the reason, of course, he suggests is that it's because you can't, like, a story very rarely can have three equally good endings. And it becomes where there's one good ending, like really entertaining, makes sense ending, and then two endings that are kind of, they're not as good. They don't fit the story as well. And then that means that a lot of the time, you get disappointed. So if you want to see the good ending, then you would have to play it again and again and again and again,
Yeah.
which would
And
take
he
a lot
actually
of time.
tells a story about a game like the one you just mentioned, but where they re-recorded cutscenes to change up the dialogue a little bit so that when you had to replay the game, you got a different cutscene that essentially conveyed the same points, but they just, changed up the dialogue a little bit. The idea was good, but sadly the game failed anyway because it's expensive. Like, if you have a 10-second video clip and you re-record it like 5 times to have 5 different versions of that video clip, you're basically fluffing up a story, and it's not going to become more replayable just because he said 2 words differently the other time. It's not going to be like,
How you cut out?
because
Oh,
oh crap.
you cut out for the last part of the sentence.
Oh, well, what I was saying is it's not like it's going to be a whole new story. It's essentially the same.
Yeah.
It's just different words. So yeah, the players didn't buy that, and we have a new follower, so we get to drink again.
Oh. Hey, Doomedog. Oh.
Doomsday.
Doomsday.
Doomsday means doomsday in Danish.
Oh. Welcome to the Company of Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. Oh, Hardly Difficult coming in with a host with 132 viewers. Welcome, guys. Maybe it's time for me to explain what we're doing just fast for all the new viewers. So, hi guys. We're going through The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell, a book of lenses. A really good book that really helps you see games from a different perspective using the said lenses. And right now we're covering chapter 17 and 18 in the second edition. And I think it's what chapters are there in the first edition?
Chapter 15 and 16 in the first edition.
Exactly. And they cover kind of tips how to improve your story in your game and different methods to use. And guys, if you haven't checked out Hardly Difficult, go check him out. He's an amazing program, amazing game dev. Go click his name or click the link and drop him a follow. Was I supposed to do hashtag? Yeah, you should have done /raid. It's available for everybody. I used it once now. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. I liked it. I didn't like that I can still not make it so that the message would somehow would be part of the whole mechanic, but whatever. There's a lot of good. We discussed here a bit about C64, which is the best computer ever, of course. Right, Tasty? No, just kidding.
It was one of the best computers of its time. I would give it that much. I think the people who say that it's the best computer ever probably still live in the 80s.
Yeah,
I loved my Commodore 64. I played so many entertaining games, and like I mentioned in one of the earlier streams, I still go back and look at Commodore 64 games just because you get inspired. It's like, wow, they had such a limited palette. How did they use this limited palette and the limited amount of pixels to convey some sort of action or something? So learn from the past, but don't dwell in it.
Yeah, don't dwell. Don't get stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just a joke. Should we go start
I know.
with the first lens, though? I know
but
you
I
know,
don't understand
but I know that
jokes.
there's some people in the chat who are like, well, actually, and they push up their glasses and they're like, did you know that? And, and you're like, well, I was kind of sarcastic, but it's fine.
Well, you're wrong.
So the first lens, should I read it? Let's see here.
Let's check if we have the same one. Is it called The Lens of the Story Machine?
Yep, it's lens 73 for me and lens something else for you.
Yeah. Maybe really quickly we should explain what the story machine is.
True.
Yeah. I mean, like earlier, Microlight was asking about well, he was asking something about stories, and he mentioned a Football Manager game. And essentially, the Football Manager game is a sort of a story machine because it provides you with elements that you translate into a story, and you can retell them later. So it's basically not a game with a story, but it's a game that creates a story through its elements. And that's what this lens will cover. So yeah, Bjorn reads, I think.
Okay. A good game is a machine that generates stories when people play it. To make sure your story machine is as productive as possible, ask yourself these questions. When players have different choices about how to achieve goals, new and different stories can arise. How can I add more of these choices? Different conflicts lead to different stories. How can I allow more types of conflict to arise from my game? When players can personalize the characters and setting, they will care more about story outcomes, and similar stories can start to feel very different. How can I let players personalize the story? Good stories have a good interest curves. Do my rules lead to stories with good interest curves? A story is only good if you can tell it. Who can your players tell the story to that will actually care? And that's actually very interesting. The last thing that was the stand lens, but it's actually interesting the last point because a lot of the times you have to play the game. Like, Tasty might explain something very cool in Divinity 2. I'm not played it at all. Not Divinity. I mean. Fail.
Destiny 2.
Destiny 2. Exactly. I don't even know the name of the game anymore. No, like what I mean is like you can tell something to another player. If he doesn't play the game, he might not understand it because you need some frame of reference, and a lot of the time it might be hard. But this is interesting. Like how make someone understand who's not playing the game, or like make the story in a way that they can understand it. It's interesting. I don't know how to do it. I don't know if he had any examples here.
I'm not sure that there are specific examples, but if you look at a game, the stories are kind of universal. Like they'll be interesting if you can pique the interest of the player, and if you can pique the interest of the listener, and that really depends on what is inherently interesting for the listener. I mean, obviously, some people are just really bad storytellers too, but I'm sure everyone here has played a game once and they can kind of retell that story about how they played, I don't know, like the first time they rescued the princess in Super Mario. And you could even retell the story of like, first time you played, you were like, I finally got to the castle and then I threw Bowser into the lava. But then Toad showed up, Toadstool or whatever his name is, and he said, the princess is in another castle. And I was like, damn, but I have to go to bed now, so I can't even continue playing. And so even such a simple element allows you to retell a story.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think also that's a well-crafted one where basically it almost becomes where everybody understands the concept of saving the princess from the castle. So you can kind of relate to it even if you don't play it, and you don't even know who Bowser is, but I guess he's the bad guy, and then you're like, okay, the stool guy, he's a total stool, so he'll steal the princess, like, and that's maybe what he means here even on that level. But then if you're like, oh, in that place I threw this spell, and then mention some big boss name, and you're like, oh, and he was like resistant to it, and then only gamers can relate to it. Like you can tell in a way where it's also a story for you, but it's not relatable by anybody else except the people who play it.
Yeah, you get it a lot from World of Warcraft players. They're like, they talk to people who have no clue about their game, and they'll use words like guild and raid and stuff like that. When, if you're talking to normal people, you have to be like, I play with my friends in a group that's called a guild or a clan, and then we go together and we have to fight a computer-controlled enemy that's really large, and he can kill us with one hit, and we have to work together to beat it. But it's like that doesn't really make it as interesting.
No, and that's the thing that's gonna feel super boring because it relates none of the awesome things. But instantly you said like, oh, there's a castle, a princess is captured in it, and maybe that's the thing. Like, it's still the same thing. You can just dress it in a way that it's easier to relate to other players.
Yeah.
But again, there's games for every type of player. You shouldn't also overthink this. I think that a lot of games also you are made for more analytical people like yourself, and then maybe dressing it up into weird things might ruin the game.
Yeah. So now we've kind of talked about like the lens of the story machine. We've talked about two methods of introducing story to your game. Do you think we should talk about the problems? Like,
Yep.
what kind of problems do you face when you sit down and say, it's just game design. I have a vision about branching story tree with full AI characters, and like you have 7 gajillion million options of going through the story. It's like, that's great on paper. Good luck making it in the game. That's when kind of the problems arise.
Exactly.
And one of the problems is he lists it here as problem number 1: good stories have unity.
Actually, that's interesting. Now you read it out loud. I'm like, problem number 1: good stories have unity. That doesn't sound like a problem. That's
True, but I think it's
he presents
the
it
thing
as
is,
a positive thing. No, it's okay. We should go through it.
I understand what you're saying, but it's because like basically what he's saying is that if you start with a story and it begins in point A, and then the player has 3 options from there, and then for every one of those 3 options he gets 3 more, and then all of a sudden you have a gajillion different endings. Some of the endings may not make good stories because of where the story started.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he means with, good stories have unity. So like, he mentions Cinderella, but it could have been anything else. Like if you start out as a super rich person, then it's not going to be that interesting of a story if he also ends up being super rich. And the other way around, if he starts out being super poor and ends up being poor because of the story choices, then it may not be that interesting of a story. So lack of unity.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no matter what choice you make, the thing that it needs to, in some way, guarantee is that it's entertaining. Is maybe a way to say it. Because also it gets easy to get stuck on those metaphors, like, but what if you did this in this left path? And you can probably fix those, but that's very important that for every choice you make, you need to make sure that both choices are interesting. Because if one is not, then someone's gonna have a sucky experience, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, this is boring. Quit. Give me my money back. Whatever. I've only played this 1 hours, and Actually, that's kind of interesting, though. I had an interesting experience in Dark Souls. Dark Souls kind of breaks some of these conventions in an interesting way. Like, I think it was Dark Souls 2, where you can, when you create the character, choose the Master Key, I think it's called. And that allows you to go a different route quite early in the game. And I took that route, and the first thing I meet is a huge dragon, and then he kills me instantly. And then I have to, then I, of course, spawn in the bonfire. But still, like, that was like, doing that choice just killed me instantly by a huge dragon. Which wasn't, maybe not as, well, it was, the thing is, it was still a good experience. I guess that's
I
why
would
it was
have
still
rage
good.
quit. I played Dark Souls. I think it's Dark Souls 3, and there's a stage where there's like a stairwell upwards, and then you have a linear path below it, and the dragon is up top on some tower or some crap, and I just kept getting this feeling like I want to go up there and loot all the corpses, but the damn dragon just keeps on breathing fire, and I spent hours just trying to figure out if I could get up there and get the treasure, and I couldn't because I didn't have, I guess, proper gear or something. But yeah, it was an infuriating game for me
Yeah,
because I suck.
it's
basically.
you're supposed to suck in that game, so.
Yeah, in that case, I'm good at it. I'm good
Exactly.
at
You're
sucking.
too good at it.
Yeah.
What
So
was
that
here?
that leads us to problem number 2.
Well, Albeit Dark has, by the way, let's go read his comment here. I have a
Yep.
question. We can see cases of self-builded histories in things like RimWorld. Granted, but are you guys trying to save sense in the history, coherence? Is that unity referred to necessary target history? I think that's different because that's what the players have built themselves, and that's more of a linear story because history is always linear. Once you've done a choice, it's linear, right? It's something that's happened already, and you're just documenting it. Whereas what Unity means is that because you're now creating the future experience of your players, like I make a game, Tasty is playing it. So what Unity refers to is like not not coherence, but it means that whatever choice, like Tasty's now playing my game, and he can choose to either quit his job in the game or not quit his job and continue being whatever a game developer, let's say. And now no matter which one he chooses, it should be an entertaining storyline. Like let's say he quits being game developer, now he's homeless on the streets like a dog, and then the game
Again.
ends, and then it's like, oh, that game sucked, that was boring. Or like the only choice then actually real to have an entertaining game is to then be a game developer. I mean, that's a very stupid example. Maybe you can explain it better, Tasty.
Like explain what Unity means?
Yeah, like can you use Unity with the, like he said here, we can see cases of self-built history, things like RimWorld. So is the coherence in that, and is that Unity then? Like,
Well, I haven't played RimWorld, so I don't know if sees that could add story elements depending on what you do, so that let's say you're getting off track, then they kind of pull you back on track. I think RimWorld is like isn't it like a Dwarf Fortress in space kind of game?
yeah, kind of, yeah. You're
Yeah.
building a base and trying to survive in foreign planet,
Yeah.
I guess.
So basically what you have there is sort of it's a story machine in the sense that you have events that can happen, like
Yeah.
a disease breaks out all of a sudden. You may or may not have foreseen it, but a disease breaks out. You do things in order to avoid that. That doesn't necessarily have unity, because you could be unlucky and you go straight from a disease to a meteor striking half your ship, and the hero of the day just died. He cured everyone from the disease, and then he got killed. That might have been a good story, and they could have programmatically put it in so that the guy who invented the cure gets killed right before he finishes his cure, and then someone else that you did not expect it changes his job and becomes a scientist and then cures the disease. But I don't think they programmed it like that. But that would have made a good story.
Yeah.
And that's the point about Unity, is that, like, let's say we take a story like Harry Potter. Harry Potter starts out really, really kind of like Cinderella. And if he could just, if you were the player and you said, well, I'm not going to live with these stupid parents anymore, his uncle or whatever, if he just took his stuff and left immediately within the first 10 minutes of the film, then it wouldn't feel like he was stuck there, and it wouldn't give us that tension and the drama, and we wouldn't project ourselves into Harry Potter and feel sorry for him. And it's kind of the same with Cinderella. It's like, she gets told by the stepmother to do something she doesn't want to do. Player, okay, A, I can do it. B, I'll leave and not do it. That's not an option because Cinderella lives there. So that's what they mean with Unity. It's like the options of the character need to fit with the story. And if the character can pick options that don't really fit with the story, then there's no longer that unity. And Cinderella and Harry Potter needs to be in a crappy situation in order for the story to be interesting. It's like Star Wars. It wouldn't have been half as, sorry for spoilers, it wouldn't have been half as cool if Luke Skywalker was already a super badass Jedi in the first movie. You know, he needs to be the farm boy who grows up and meets the mentor and learns how to be awesome and doesn't really want to leave his planet, but then he does and stuff. You know, so I think that's what's meant by unity, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next one then, I guess.
Yeah.
And the problem is combinatorial. Combinatorial explosion. That's a very hard word. Easier to read, but hard to pronounce. I fear there are too many realities by John Steinbeck. I don't know if we should go through. Should we go through all of these very?
We can do it really fast because I did kind of cover it earlier. Basically, combinatorial explosion is when, you know, if you have X amount of options at each point in your story, then it will explode. The amount of endings you can get will explode, and that's where, you know, they try to cover it up by having all of these multiple stories kind of merge at a later point. But that again presents a new problem where the player is like, okay, so first time I played it, I saved the farmer. Next time I played it, I didn't save the farmer, but I saved the ninja. But, you know, 2 hours later, I'm still at the same point in the story, regardless of whether I saved the ninja or the farmer. So what difference does it make? And that's really something that you need to think about when you make your stories.
Yeah, a lot of the time, this kind of, you know, even if you have a split storyline, they always, and you just basically have to make them go back to the same point, right? Like no matter what you choose, at the end, at some point, they will converge into one point. Because otherwise, you get that combinatorial explosion where you have
exactly,
you know, 5 billion different storylines the dev would have to put in. And then you have to make sure they all have unity and all that stuff. Son of Gaming, no problem, dude. Welcome. Welcome also Seedpod Games and Mr. Creation. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
There seems to be a very deep conversation about VR. I'm sorry, I'm not going to join that one.
I don't have any experience with VR other than I have a phone that I can put into a pair of goggles and then I can play a Halloween roller coaster ride with my goggles on, but I just don't buy it. You know, I'm sure it'll be awesome someday, but I just feel right now that the games are too simple for me to enjoy. And that's probably because I'm a game designer, you know. It's like, what's this? You know, it's just basically
just wait.
Same game.
Now
I'm
just
waiting.
In 5 minutes, someone in chat will be, what about this game? Have you played this? Have you seen this? This is really cool. There's interesting games, but I haven't afforded to buy one. I can't fit one in this room either.
Yeah.
I call me off topic, man. Exactly. Hey, by the way, Gillette and Blacksmith, welcome. Blacksmith, welcome to the company of Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. You see, Tasty, how much you get to drink when you cheer every follow.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Because my room is very, very warm today. We closed all the doors, and it's like probably a sauna. And I know Finland probably love it if we had like sauna stream, but I sweat.
Yeah, the Game Dev sauna.
Yeah.
Actually, they have that. They have a meeting where game designers meet at a sauna once a month, and they discuss all kinds of things. But it's a private
It probably releases, other, like, you relax in a different way when you're in a sauna. You would probably get a bunch of ideas you mightn't have gotten sitting in a stream like this.
But the same could be said in any situation.
Yeah,
that's a bit out of norm. I think that's the reason, like he even says here in the beginning of the book, is that to create meaningful and interesting experiences that other people haven't had, you also have to have interesting experiences yourself in your life. Like, if you experience the same that everybody else has experienced, it's going to be hard to create something novel.
Yeah. Funky Kimball says, hello from Finland, Rock Knight Studios. And if I remember correctly, You hosted Rock Knight Studios?
Yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
you?
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know you guys were from Finland. I'm also from Finland. I'm currently Finland. Tasty is not. He's
Yeah, I'm in
just
Denmark.
making dirty sauna jokes.
Yes. Dirty sauna jokes.
Oh wait, where did I know you were Finland? Well, anyway, welcome. Um, yeah. So that's basic combinatorial exposure. Like if you, the basic concept, just to reiterate, is that if you would have to every time you have there's a choice, you would have to split into three, and those then would split into three, and those would split into three. Just after 10 choices, you would have like tens of thousands of different paths, and that, of course, just from a development point of view, would be quite quite a lot of work.
Yeah, way too much work with very little reward, and it's just not viable. You can't make like 70,000 different endings because, again, then people would be like, but what's the real ending? And that kind of leads us to problem number 3, where multiple endings disappoint. It's like, is this the real ending? Do I have to play the whole thing again to see another ending? That's just, it's a bad thing. And then we're on to problem number 4. Not
Yeah.
enough verbs.
What?
And
4? Oh yeah, the ending we already covered. Yeah.
yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Don't let me
Well,
stop.
not enough verbs is like, in video games, your character can do things like running, jumping, climbing, throwing, action-y things. And then in movies, you have character or stories, you have characters that talk and they negotiate, they convince, they argue, shout, plead, complain. You just don't, you can't reliably make a game that allows your game character to have the same level of interactivity as you would in the real world. So that's another problem with your stories.
Yeah. At least yet.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. It takes so much time to do, and then the focus kind of goes away from the game. It's like, is it really a game when I spend all my time pretending to be a diplomat? I guess it is.
If it's a game about being a diplomat, but I mean,
Exactly.
what I meant with that is, like, I think he even mentions it here somewhere that at some point probably technology will go far enough, which VR is already starting. Maybe these, if you've seen the iPhone X emoji things, where they use tracking and of course Connect and all those,
I haven't
probably
seen that.
this is gonna be revolutionized in like the next, I don't know how many tens of years. But for now, with the current set of technologies, you can't create these verbs. Hey,
Yeah.
Devon the Go, welcome to, or Devon the Go. I don't know where, or Dev on the Go. Welcome to the company Game Devs, and cheers for the follow, dude.
Yes, welcome, Devon Thie. Or Dev on the Go. Sorry for butchering your name.
Yeah, that's the hard part. I need to have a follow notification that actually supports capitals, so I could see, because usually people capitalize things, so it would be easier to read. Because is your name Devon, or is it Dev on the Go? I don't know.
Devon Thigo.
Devon.
I'm pretty sure it's Dev on the Go, which is actually a cool name.
It would be actually hilarious if his name was actually Devon the Go, and now he's like, oh my god, how can you call me the Dev? Oh my god, I'm insulted.
Yeah.
We got another follow. Megger's Path, welcome to the company of Game Devs, and cheers too. Are we drinking too much?
No, it's fine. I'm just drinking water.
Oh, I'm drinking vodka because I'm a fan.
And
Dehydrated.
that's perfectly fine. You can hold your vodka.
Let's see at the end of the stream.
Yeah.
It becomes funny. No, but what I mean is technology might change this over time, that we can get more verbs, not maybe everything, but for example, but it is kind of like you have negotiating in some games, but it's kind of artificial in a way, whereas jumping in the game is very direct.
Yeah. So the next problem about stories and building them is it's called time travel makes tragedy obsolete, and basically what it means, like, if you're going through a story and you can have multiple choices, or you can uh, redo or undo your choices, that would make certain stories not as good. And the writer Jesse Shell mentions Romeo and Juliet. That is a good story because of two people who are in love and they can't because of their families, and eventually they commit suicide. If they didn't do all of those things, the story would not have been a tragic story, and it wouldn't have been popular. It wouldn't have been as good if it was different. At least that's my guess. Um,
he says, why don't video games make us cry? And not to get the...
because we don't kill enough kittens.
Exactly. No, but I've cried at games. I'm
Yeah.
not embarrassed to say that. Like, and that's why I kind of see, like, he even phrases it here a bit like, that's not something that never happens. And I've had several games. I've cried probably, maybe less than in movies. I haven't cried that, but I haven't cried that much in movies either. So it's about the equal number. So, I don't know. But he's right, the tragedies are harder to do maybe in games.
Yeah, I think, well, it also really depends on the type of person, because I think it has to do with, who plays games and what touches them. Like for me, I get emotionally touched by music. And that for me was very, very obvious. Game, what's it called? Ori and the Blind Forest, or the whatever forest. I didn't even play the game. I just saw like a clip with some really, really emotional music and a little glowy guy and his mom died thing, and I was like, who opened the window and let the bugs into my eyes? It was like, that was really, really touching.
Yeah.
So I think everyone gets touched by different things. And maybe gamers just don't have a tendency to be touched by music in general. I don't know. I mean,
maybe it's, you know what could be a thing? I think games only do tragedy well when it is in kind of a cutscene or forced nature. Because he says here, time travel makes tragedy obsolete, meaning that if I can just replay it and undo the tragedy, then it becomes obsolete, right?
yeah.
Versus, like for example, one of very sad ending in I don't know which one of the Final Fantasies it was. Right?
7.
Yeah. Was it?
I'm guessing it's 7. We're talking
Maybe.
about
Probably.
Sephiroth murders.
I played them all
Aerith.
back to back at one point because I borrowed a friend's PlayStation. So for me, it's all like a blur. Which one is which? But that was very sad. But I couldn't replay it and undo it. Like that was the ending of the game, right?
Yeah.
Darkest Dungeon thrives on tragedy. I think Darkest Dungeon thrives on creating meat machines that you throw people into the grinder. At least that's how I played it. Oh, I can let this guy die. I'll get a new guy just when I get a new mission.
Yeah, that I actually didn't enjoy Darkest Dungeon because of that, and I had issues at first with XCOM because of the way that it annoys me when I spend time naming a character or something and building it and giving it gear, and then it's like he steps 3 steps out of the starting area and then he just implodes from the oncoming assault from enemies, and I'm like, I happen to like that guy. Why did you murder him all? It's like, I don't tend to do well in those games, but XCOM, the first one, I actually played that a lot. Like, I played it for years. It's one of my favorite games of all times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that Lilybite is kind of the in XCOM moments were truly tragic. If you were playing on Iron Man, you spend all character and then he dies, and it's like, oh, McGirt, no.
Yeah, I have had those kind of experiences. The thing is, a lot of the time if it was really bad, I would quit playing the game because you play the game because of that character. Or then you just load it, if it had loading system, you could just load and then he's alive again and then continue. Try to play it until he doesn't die.
No.
We have some chat comments here maybe we could read. It's
Yes.
hard for me to play games without thinking about program mechanics. Hard to enjoy. How do I
Who
let
says
go?
that?
Seedpod Games.
Oh.
That's the danger of becoming a game designer, a game developer, is that you will start seeing games with other eyes. You're gonna start using your analytical mind when playing it because you're interested in how they made stuff instead of just experiencing the experience. How to let go? It's very personal. I don't know. You just have to, or you will never enjoy games at some point.
But is it a problem? I mean, I get what SeedPod is saying, but is it really to play a game and then look at it from that perspective? Because it's kind of the same when you're watching a movie. If you're interested in movies, you analyze it. It is basically just a different form of entertainment, just like games are a form of entertainment. So,
Well, it depends if you find
you
it
play the game, you
entertaining.
enjoyed the time that you spent, and so maybe you didn't finish the game, but you had fun and you got your money's worth.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if it ruins the whole experience in a way that he doesn't enjoy it at all. That's maybe the thing. That it just becomes work versus play.
I love work.
You're a workaholic.
Yeah.
That's one way to solve it. Just start loving working and making
Yeah,
games so
just
much.
find work that you love. I love
Exactly.
working. It makes me happy. As long as you learn stuff. I mean, that's the thing that makes me happy. It's when I learn new things. So I just make sure to have a job where I learn new things as much as possible.
Yeah, we are having much more, weird sound things today where you're cutting off. It's very odd.
Am I cutting off?
Yeah, at
Oh,
times. Someone was asking, are you guys liking the book so far? Yeah, I've learned a
yeah.
lot. Even if I read this in the past, I can't remember everything. I'm very sure I'll forget half of these things, but maybe after reading it now very thoroughly, because we're analyzing it, I think that, for example, using the deck of lenses, they have an app called the deck of lenses. It's going to be very interesting to. I might use that more when I kind of run into situations where I'm uncertain. Use these lenses to try to find the problem. I think it's been a very, very good experience, even if it's quite a theoretical book. I don't know how you feel, Tasty.
I'm using it. I read it before, but I never read it as dedicatedly as I do now. Because now it's like I know I need to read it, and I need to read it well enough that I can retell what I read. And there's a huge difference because I have a tendency sometimes to sit down and read, and then my mind drifts, and then 3 pages have passed, and I'm like, okay, I can't kind of remember what I read, but also I don't want to reread it. So let me just skip on ahead. And then all of a sudden the book is finished and I get maybe 60% of it. And so I'm actually very pleased with this book. And I feel that I've learned a lot of things that are game development related, but or game design related, but I feel that I've also learned a lot of things about random stuff in the world, and that's one of the things I like. I like learning random stuff, like new proverbs and
Yeah.
learning how probability math was invented and stuff like that. So in that sense, I think he did a really good job with this book. Like it's good for someone like me. If you like to know random things, get the book.
Yeah, I think also I would recommend this book for someone who's made a couple of games, especially if you're making a game right now that's a bit more involved. I would recommend this book more for than if you have no touch to game development. These are just going to be alien concepts which you can't relate to as easily, and that's going to be hard to kind of wrap your head around what he's talking about. There's better books for that, like if you're wanting to get started, like Level Up, maybe the Theory of Fun. I don't know. What do you think?
I think as a new game developer, game design is not a skill that one should focus on as much, because as a new game developer, you are essentially trying to learn how to develop games. And the first 10 games are going to be somewhat remakey, cloney style games. And I know a lot of people are like, no, no, no. My first game is going to be unique. It's going to be nothing like you've ever seen. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be an RPG. It's going to have 37 classes, none of which you've heard about before. So you just enjoy playing your Chronospectrometer Mancer with his
I like him.
life
He's friendly.
essence value and his Mananusha points. And I'm like, dude, it's a mage. He has health and mana. You don't need to rename it. It doesn't make your game better.
Dude, it's not pronounced mage. It's mache. Mache.
Mache. Sorry. Janosh, I'm talking to you.
37 classes, yeah. Yeah. Also, I think, like, in a way, everybody is a game designer over time. There's, of course, the people who do it as a profession, of course. But everybody learns about game design because it's a soft skill. And that's why, like, the advice that Tasty gives, that go learn first a hard skill. Like, learn how to at least, like, either program something or art, like, creating art for the game. Because that's more... Like, even if you're not going to make a game alone, it's still kind of... Having both a soft and a hard skill is going to be better for you, like, from point of view of getting work.
Yeah.
When you're not just a, game designer.
Yeah.
And even if you are,
like
you can create prototypes. Sorry.
It's like not knowing how to ride a bike and then starting to plan your journey through a circus act. It's like, learn how to ride the bike first and then decide if you want to on like a unicycle 500 feet up in the air with a blindfold, which is essentially what it's like to make a game.
I regret every day of my life that I didn't learn first how to do the unicycle. Nix!
Yay.
Yay! Nix with the resub.
Oh my god!
Oh my
4
god!
months!
Let's dance! 4 months, that's crazy. I didn't know I had streamed that long already. Let's start some hype in chat for Nix. Dude, thank you so much for the support. Thanks
One time
to you.
we had a book club that lasted 4 months.
Exactly.
One episode.
One episode. Well, we did do the marathon. Was it last?
Yeah, it was
Sunday?
1 week ago.
And it was
on Sunday.
And it actually took 24 hours. It was like basically a bit before 7, so it was about 24 hours. That's crazy.
And we weren't there.
You were there. I saw your log. You were crying.
Yeah. but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Tuka Art says, is this the last chapter of this book? It is not. It is. We are a little more than halfway through. But we think that the later chapters are going to be shorter. We will hurry and be more entertaining.
Okay.
Maybe.
We need to move forward. We already wasted 1 hour on the first part of this chapter. Yeah, we still have quite a few. So let's go straight to the next lens, I think. Right?
Yep.
Because
the lens of the obstacle.
Exactly. You can read that one. You
okay.
can have it.
A goal with no obstacle is not worth pursuing. Use this lens to make sure your obstacles are ones that your players will want to overcome. What is the relationship between the main character and the goal? Why does the character care about it? What are the obstacles between the character and the goal? Is there an antagonist who's behind the obstacles? What is the relationship between the protagonist and the antagonist? Do the obstacles gradually increase in difficulty? Some say the bigger the obstacle, the better the story. Are your obstacles big enough? Can they be bigger? Great stories often involve the protagonist transforming in order to overcome the obstacle. How does your protagonist transform? So yeah, that was the lens of the obstacle.
it's kind of a bombshell of all kinds of things. But
What-
it's interesting to think at it from point of view of obstacles, because I think as a game designer, that's an easy way of thinking, to think about the goals, the obstacles, and the conflicts. Like, what kinds of obstacles does my character face, and how does he grow, or even
Yeah.
the antagonist or whoever the characters in the whole game. And that also, ooh, Microlight with the sub, just in the middle of the sentence.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop whoop! Thank you for the support, dude. Let's have some hype in chat for Microlight. Now you have
Thank you, time.
access to GameDew. Remember, as a subscriber, you get priority feedback on our Tuesday stream. So if you're submitting your game, should we drink to this too? Maybe we should.
I did already, so
I saw that.
you know.
So
How much do I
remember, you
have
get
left?
priority feedback. So, and also I do longer feedback. And also remember to sync your Twitch to your Discord, because you get then the access to the secret channel. Sup, Gree too. Welcome. What was I saying? Yeah, so the obstacles, because I think that kind of lends towards, if you're making a story-based game, the obstacles lead toward
The goal.
the goal, but also kind of like, let's say it might help you with level design. Because you can,
Yeah.
like, depends on what you mean with obstacles, but, you know, it could help you think about what type, like, I'm not mean like actual stones or things, physical things, but it might mean that you could create parallels in how what is in the level design, what kind of things you do put in there
Yeah.
that reflect, you know, what obstacles the character is facing. Is there anything
Yep.
else? The bigger the obstacle, the better the story. Yes, just make bigger rocks in your level design, the better the story.
Yeah, make the player climb a mountain. Give them superpowers so they can punch their way through the mountain, which kind of leads us on to the next story tip, which is provide simplicity and transcendence. And basically what it means is try to make your game world simple so that there aren't all these fancy rules, and then try to make your player feel powerful somehow. They bring up some examples, like in the medieval world, we have a simple world. There are simpler things happening then, but then they add magic to kind of give that feeling of transcendence. And, you know, then they go on to talk about futuristic settings and war settings. Specifically in war, you know, it's like it's a simpler world because you're in a war setting and you can shoot things, and that makes you feel powerful. And that's not necessarily something you can do in real life. And yeah, then they kind of talk about the modern thing where,
Yep,
you
cutting
know,
out.
that's a modern set. Oh, can you hear me now?
No, yep. It's just like very rarely, but there's like a long pause and then nothing. It's perfect, and then
Oh,
it's just the last sentence. Futuristic, I think. No, modern. Sorry.
yeah. I was talking about modern and how Grand Theft Auto does that. It sets you in a modern world, but by letting you be a criminal, you feel transcendent because you can do things that you couldn't normally do in a modern setting as you and me. Like, you know, Bjorn and I are totally awesome here, but we wouldn't go out in the real world and be just as awesome. Like, we won't commit crime and steal cars and stuff, but we can do it in Grand Theft Auto. Or when Bjorn plays The Sims, you know, he can like build a house and put a person in there and then remove all the doors and windows and watch them. Oh, wait, that was me. Watch them die.
No, that was us.
Oh, you did it too? Okay, cool.
I've done all kinds of crazy things in Sims. I think the only person that I've seen play Sims weirdly is Arash, because he used to play it where he actually simulates his whole life in Sims, and I'm just looking like,
Yeah.
that looks so boring and stressful. Let's put some people in a dungeon and see what happens.
You sound exactly like me. That's probably why we're friends. It's like we do weird stuff in Sims. I haven't played it since Sims 1.
Inner Light, welcome to the company of Game Devs, and cheers for the follow.
Welcome.
We're having a lot of
Lilybite
follows
says
today.
we're a sadist.
Sadist.
I might be. I don't know. I don't think so.
No characters, no people or animals or things were harmed while we were playing The Sims. Except in
I
game.
do it for research. I play The Sims for research.
So Grease says his game has been doing good. Cool, dude. Hope you can just continue developing. That's the thing. You have those periods of your game feeling really, oh my god, I got so much developed, and then you're like, I hate my game, I suck, and then I love my game, I hate my game. But I think the hate is part of development too. He should have a lens of hate. When you hate your game, look at this lens.
The lens of hate.
Maybe there is one. There should be. Let's see. He talks about
When you really hate your game, ask yourself this question. Do I want to delete all the source code? If so, where do you start?
Which part?
Yeah, which part?
I think if you don't hate your game, this actually, let's not say it because I think it is probably not true. But I think why a lot of people do hate their game, let's put it like that, is because they care about their game. And that leads them to feel strongly about it and they want it to be as good as they can. But, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you could reach a point where you hate working on your game for whatever reason because it's not what you wanted it to. I guess that's the feeling you're talking about.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm stuck still on the lens of hate. If you're reading a lot of YouTube comments, just stop. Stop.
Yeah, the lens of hate. Are you receiving extraordinary amounts of hatred? Don't read your community websites for your beta early access game. That's probably not going to help, but I mean, some people are really mean at that. It's like, I bought this game for $3, totally not great or anything. It's alpha, it says so here on the front page. Yeah, but it doesn't have matchmaking. It's not a multiplayer game. Yeah, it doesn't have that. I know, we weren't selling it as a multiplayer game. 1 star, you suck.
Yeah.
Let me just go cry in the corner now while I Google your home address.
I think if there's no lens of hate in this book, we should write one and submit it to Jesse. We've been thinking about this thing, but I think actually, well, let's not go too deep in the rabbit hole, but I do think that it would be helpful if this book covered it, how to deal with negative comments or feeling, the feeling that most devs have it, like when the game is not really ready and you don't know where to go necessarily, and you're like, you just kind of, I don't want to say hate your game, but you're like, oh, I'm sucking. I don't know what it's gonna become.
Yeah, without derailing too much, like Lilybite says, I don't believe in pandering to bad customers. You hate the game? Thanks for the money, GTFO. But I think the better route would probably be to give a player their money back. I mean, if they truly, really dislike and regret buying my game, I would rather give them the money back for the game, even if they played it, even if they finished it 1,000,000 times, because part of me feels that a player that hates the game is going to deal more damage to my game than a player who loves it, obviously. But, like if I give them the money back, then all of their whining means nothing, because it's like, you didn't like the game, you get the money back. Now your opinion is invalid. In a way. But that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, it's about caring about your players in a way too. That, hey, if you didn't think it's worth it, then now you only wasted, like, the only thing you lost was the time.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This is gonna be a lot of work. This sucks. I suck. Maybe this will turn okay. This is awesome. Yeah, I think that was tweeted.
That sounds like puberty.
Yeah, basically making games like puberty.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's the lens of that goes into the lens of simplicity and transcendence. It's lens 75 in the second edition, and lens
67. In the first?
67 in the first. And it says, to make sure you have the right mix of simplicity and transcendence, ask yourself these questions. How is my world simpler than the real world? Can it be simpler in other ways? What kind of transcendent power do I give to the player? How can I give even more without removing challenge from the game? Is my combination of simplicity and transcendence contrived? Or does it provide my players with special kind of wish fulfillment? Like being a gangster in San Francisco, driving a sports car.
Or a tank. Not a tank? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of hard to. He does lay it out, which you read already really well in the book. I think it's very hard to explain, but once you understand the concept of simplicity and transcendence, it does make sense. Kind of, you shouldn't think it as make it as simple. It basically means like. I think also in many ways it means that you don't have to follow the real world rules. You just have to make it consistent and
exactly.
And like The Sims. If you play The Sims and you're replaying your whole life in there, it might be a bit too real for you, and you might want to play something simpler. The idea is not to recreate life. That is then for scientists, but to create interesting. We want to feel powerful, like in The Matrix. What Neo does there. He basically.
Whoa! I know kung fu.
Exactly. That's the feeling you want, right? In your game.
Yeah.
People feel empowered, not like... It's basically... Most people, anyway, play games to escape real life. Because it's more entertaining. And that's what you need to do, in a way.
Yeah. Bartway says, what is that behind you? That is mannequin statue.
How did you know what he was referring to? Maybe he meant the guy who's
Maybe he meant
Totoro.
Maybe he meant Totoro behind you.
Exactly.
Or who's the other guy with the red circle?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, that's One Punch Man.
Yes. Because I one punch my games.
Yeah.
That actually would be a cool idea.
One punching your games?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yep.
So we've reached story tip number 3. And I think we shouldn't go into depth about what the hero's journey is. Just know that it's a way to structure your stories so that they feel a bit like Star Wars and all of the traditional, like the story of Odysseus and Prometheus and Osiris and religious stories. How someone starts weak, becomes strong, beats stuff, overcomes blah 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 blah. Google it. The hero's journey. So lens number 68, the lens of the hero's journey.
Yep, and 76 in the second edition.
Yep. Many heroic stories have similar structure. Use this lens to make sure you haven't that might improve your story. Ask yourself these questions. Does my story have elements that qualify it as a heroic story? If so, how does it match up with the structure of the hero's journey? Would my story be improved by including more archetypical elements? Does my story match this form so closely that it feels hackneyed? And hackneyed is a word that means something along the lines of, has it been rehashed and redone so many times that it feels pointless?
Yeah, like cliche.
I had to Google it.
You could call it, I guess, a bit cliche also, I guess. It's not the same word, but I mean.
Yeah, but it's like when cliche has become like super overused, that's when it becomes hackneyed, because
so it's super cliche.
We kind of encourage super cliche. One punch cliche.
One punch cliche.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna call it from now on. Does your story match this form so closely that it feels one punch cliched? I want to read it just hackneyed. I just like it and pronounce that better. But I know it's
I thought it was hackneyed, but had to look it up so I can figure out how do I pronounce it. and it is hackneyed.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. Hundreds of
Yeah.
regular punches. That's what my game right now feels like. The super move.
Yeah, you
100
want to
of
make a
regular.
one punch, but you make hundreds of regular weak punches. It's like numerous slap edge. So, story tip number 4: put your story to work. Why does that not? Oh, yeah.
By the way, just
Um,
it's interesting that he brings up the hero's journey just fast. I'm not gonna go in deep into it, but there's other ones there's other types of stories. But I think a lot of time hero's journey is kind of a very common in games. It would be
Yeah.
interesting to see other. Well, he kind of touched it with the Romeo and Juliet and their tragedy, but there's different that are used in classical storytelling. But it seems like Hero's Journey is one of the most used, and maybe that's why he's made its own lens here. That it's so
Hackney
common.
and Slashny games.
Hackney and Slashny.
That's
Yeah.
Garantor. That's a new genre. It's like when you redo hack and slash games too much. It's hackneyed and slashnied games.
Yeah, I think hundreds of regular punch games are also as good as one punch games. They're just different types.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
So
but
the
let's go.
next story tip is put your story to work. And basically, I think the essence of that to take away from it is that you usually start with a story, but don't have it so rigid that you can't change your story. Like if something in your game cannot be done to match the story that you have, then change your story to make it work. Or like an example they talk about here is like they have a technological difficulty where they can't show terrain under this spaceship, so they end up with like a green mist for like the fog because of some technical error. And they changed their story to say that the aliens that invaded the planet had used toxic gas to invade the planets. And that's an excellent way of like changing your story so that it fits with the game in its current state. Obviously, it needs to be consistent, and that's where we move on to tip number 5. Bjorn.
What? I need to say something? No, just kidding. Keep your story world consistent. And here comes your favorite. Are you sure you don't want to do this one? It has your favorite old French saying in it.
Am I allowed to read it in
I don't know.
Franglish?
What does chat say? Can we do it in Franglish, or should we?
We could do a vote. Like, I don't know. Can you set up a vote or something? Do you want it? Do you want Tasty to read Franglish, which is basically English, with a really bad French impression? It's an old saying, and it's French because it talks about wine, so it must be French.
You want to do it? Yeah, sounds great. Okay, we have one
Okay,
agreement.
we have one vote.
That's-
Agreed. Yes,
that's-
we do it.
That's how I do
If-
these votes.
Yeah, there's an old French saying that goes, if you add a spoonful of wine to a barrel full of sewage, you get a barrel full of sewage. If you add a spoonful of sewage to a barrel full of wine, you get a barrel full of sewage.
So I really like this. The thing is, I think it reads better than you heard. So let's see if we can get this.
Wait, what? Do you want me to read it again?
No.
In
I'm
English?
showing it in chat.
Oh,
I think if you're
Oh, you
full
are?
screen, you might be able to read that.
I can just type it. in a
Anyway,
second.
it's
There we
it's
go.
funny because, and what he means with that is that consistency is very important in any story. And once you break that consistency, like he uses, for example, the Happy Days, where there was an episode where the Fonzie. This is the thing. This is a very old reference. I don't even know how many of you guys know what Happy Days is. But for the old school people like me, so Fonzie is basically he's a cool guy and he can do all kinds of incredible stuff. And in one finale of an episode, he jumps with a motorbike over cars and lands and successful. Everybody's like, yay! And that's something Fonzie would do. But then later on, they want to like play it up even more. And then suddenly he's riding some, what was it, water skis and jumping over sharks. And that was a
Yes,
bit
and
like,
that is
why the
how-
hell would he do that? Like, And then that's the point that, I mean, realistically, he could still do that. In real world, you probably could jump over sharks with water skis, but it's not something the character would do. It's not believable. And that's very important, that you need to make sure your characters are doing things that are believable and keep that consistency. Because once you break that consistency, you will, basically everything falls flat. You will never believe that character again or that story. Wednesday, Thursdays, happy days. Do do do. Again, does Jackass stuff. No, it's not. And dangerous to say, if you paint a poop in gold, it still tastes like poop. What?
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially the same. It's like, if something's
poop with
bad, adding a bit of good to it is not going to make it better if it's bad.
How thick of a coat of gold, though? Okay, I'll
Very thick.
Yeah, and then it won't taste anything. Anyway.
And Mr. Croatian is like, but it's gold. Bling, bling.
Gold is best.
Yeah. Best, the gold. Yeah. Woo!
At least your poop will be more valuable.
Garanthor is questioning why we taste poop.
Yeah, that's a Danish thing. I don't know why they do it.
Maybe we don't taste it. Maybe we just say, I think actually it might be like, if you paint a poop golden, it will still be a poop or something like that. I don't know. I don't really dabble in Danish poop related proverbs. How much gold are you adding to said poop?
Yeah. If there's 99.999% gold and just a grain of poop, would it still taste like poop? I don't know. You need to find out.
Garanthor says, well, I guess you could still lick it because the paint will protect you from taste. But bite into it.
This is actually the announcement of Tasty's new line of streams on his channel that are all poop related, especially Tasty. No. Go follow
Tasty
him.
Poop. Yeah, follow me for more weird proverbs and.
If you like poop proverbs, please follow Tasty. Yeah. But yeah, that's the basic idea, and it also uses Mass Effect 3 as an example, where they basically announced that. It has not everybody liked the ending, and then the developers just announced that we're gonna patch it and change the ending, and then everybody's like, "What the hell?" And then basically it made it again like, "Oh, the dev can just change it," and then it's not true anymore, which kind of again, I don't want to call it make believe, but it kind of ruins the idea that
it ruins the investment that you make as a player.
Exactly. Yeah. And the idea that someone just can come in and take it away from you, even if it is bad, it can still make it just worse. So consistency. And I think that is also, and he was going to talk about this later, but I want to bring it up now. And consistency is so much more important than realism. And that's something I discussed with so many devs, which is like, oh, that's not realistic. And it's like, dude, this is a magical world. This is, the dev decides what is realistic as long as it's consistent and believable. He actually talks about it later, so we'll come back to this. So.
Yeah, and it also, we're kind of moving on to the story tip number 6, make your story world accessible, which talks exactly about that thing where, it does not have to be realistic. It just needs to be consistent. And some of the examples that they're talking about is like they had this this pirate game with ships sailing, and as you know, they sail by wind power. And if the ship is sailing to the left, then the wind is coming from the right side and pushing it towards the left. Technically, the flag would then also have to blow forward, but a lot of players would be commenting on that, and they would be like, why does the flag go the wrong way? And the devs were like, oh, but technically, you see, the wind is blowing, so the flag would go forward in the direction that the ship is sailing. Oh, but it looks bad, and then they changed it. And that's one of these things where, use make your story world accessible for the players. I'm not saying players are dumb. I'm just saying if it feels like it should be going backwards as the ships are sailing, then do that, because otherwise it won't feel accessible.
Yeah. So also, what is belief and consistency has not necessarily, like, someone probably could take any game if they're a physicist and tear it to pieces, but it's not about that. It's about how we as people conceive stuff, like not necessarily how it reflects into the real world. Actually, the thing is, even this sail conversation, you could add that it's in, like, anybody who sails, where the wind comes from is very complicated thing. Like, I think, if I don't remember incorrectly, when the wind is on an angle towards the ship, like, which you would think as normal logic would be the slowest, when it's kind of blowing toward, like, straight from the front, like, not straight from the front, but slightly from an, like, 45 angle, is when the ship is traveling the fastest, because they can angle the sails, and it's something to do with, it's a bit like how planes even work or something. I don't know. I had no idea, so don't ask me. But it, like, I read at some point, I was discussing something with a person who knows what they're talking about, and they were like, "Oh, did you know that when the wind is actually from straight from the back, it's not when the ship is going the fastest?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea. I didn't understand anything." And that becomes even more
and again,
complicated.
if you have these pirate ship games and you've got like one ship there, and technically the wind can't come from the back of both of them, so how do they sail, blah blah blah, that's really not important unless you want to do like a pirate simulator, or should I say a sail rotation simulator game. It's like, do you want to make a pirate game, or do you need a PhD in sail rotation and wind directional anticipation skills?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that this kind of covers. Like, make your story world accessible. If you want to make a game about shooting rockets, then make a game about shooting rockets. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to ignite the rockets and fire them, because that would be a brain game rather than an action thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Sail simulator.
Of course, if you can make a game that is about simulating sails and experimenting around that, and where you have to have real knowledge of sailing, that's fine. But then the game is about that, not about action and shooting cannons necessarily, because probably using and trying to figure out calculating wind and all these factors is probably going to take up all your time. And it's not going to feel very actiony. It's going to feel more, again, like we had in the previous chapters, is it a game of the hand or of the head? So if it's of the head, meaning more of a simulation, probably more realism or thought into that thing needs to be done. But even then, you don't necessarily even have to be realistic. Again, I mean, if you go in the world, like, let's say Lord of the Rings, I mean, is that realistic? People would be like, yeah, it's realistic.
You can have my axe.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's realistic. No, it's actually not. There's no magic in the world as we can prove it as of yet. So then if we base it on realism and orcs don't exist, it's not realistic. It's a fantasy world that's consistent.
I'm pretty sure I saw an orc or two when I went to Finland.
Oh, yeah, those are not orcs. They're trolls, technically. I'm sorry. I have to correct you for the final time.
The final time?
This is the
final
time.
I have many more errors.
No. This is
I'm not done.
How can you misread Finland and its folklore? Anyway. But also another example would be, like, sometimes you want to exaggerate the things. Like, he also discusses that, for example, when the ship goes forward, if you have an actual realistic pace of what a wind could push, it looks very slow and it's like boring. It's like, it's not like a speedboat or anything. So you speed it up. You can do that with visual effects, even, like the amount of foam and water splooshing, I think when I played, like, one of my favorite sailing games, it was amazing from an experience point of view. It's the Assassin's Creed. Is it Black Sail? What is it called? Black something? I don't know.
Black Wake?
Is that
Lillybite said something about Black Wake? I don't know what that is.
Is that Assassin's? Anyway, it's one of the Assassin's Creed series with pirates. Oh, Petite Pierre. Welcome to the company of game devs. And cheers for the follow, dude. Black Flag. Thank you, Microlight. This is the second time on stream. I forget. But in that, you know, the amount of like foam coming out of the water, it makes the thing seem so amazing. But I'm very sure if you go and sail, it's not that much foam. Oh, Black Wake is a multiplayer pirate ship. Yeah, that's a different thing. That I have no experience in. But you know, if you drive a racing game and you're driving a car, you want to exaggerate the feeling of speed, so it feels like you're driving really fast, even if you realistic it might be like going 1 mile an hour or something.
Yeah. So, lens of the weirdest thing.
Yep. Do you want to?
Because it kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. The lens of the weirdest thing. Having weird things in your story can help give meaning to unusual game mechanics. It can capture the interest of the player, and it can make your world seem special. Too many things that are too weird, though, will render your story puzzling and inaccessible. To make sure your story is the good kind of weird, ask yourself these questions. What's the weirdest thing in my story? How can I make sure that the weirdest thing doesn't confuse or alienate the player? If there are multiple weird things, should I maybe get rid... Sorry, let me reread that. If there are multiple weird things, should I maybe get rid of or coalesce some of them? That's really weird. He has a space between may and be. That's not how you spell maybe.
Yeah, it's not in the second edition.
Oh, okay. If there's nothing weird in my story, is the story still interesting? And that was that lens.
Oh, in Black Wake, it's a multiplayer, so you work with a crew. Oh, it's a bit like Icarus. That was like what is it called?
Guns of Icarus.
Yeah, blimps, or whatever you call them, zeppelins.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
Lilybite says, nothing more fun than a captain of a ship rage quitting because his crew are a bunch of half-wits.
Yeah.
Imagine if they did that like in real. You're all a bunch of nitwits. I'm just gonna walk the plank. And then he just walks off the plank.
I'm very sure that has happened in real life, where it's like, I'm out of here.
You think so?
But I don't think he walked the plank. Like, he just walked it at the harbor. Or then again, if he owns the boat, he probably just gets rid of the crew. I mean, I'm not leaving an expensive boat to some half-wits, but who knows? But still, I'm sure it's happened. Maybe if it's like some other problem. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, actually, my problem with those games is that a lot of the time it's kind of hard to get. Like, you have to have friends.
Yeah.
To say like who want to play that game at the same moment. I do have friends, but not always friends that can play it when I want to play it and want to play exactly that game. So,
yeah, I have a distinct lack of pirate friends who want to play pirate games.
Yeah. And also in Guns of Icarus, I don't remember, do you choose a class before you start? Or is it, I think anybody can do anything or something?
I never played it.
Oh. Well, that's another, if it had that, that's also another issue where when you start, if you're with a bunch of strangers, you have to start, you know, not everybody knows what to do, and it becomes like actually being able to, you know, play as a team becomes impossible. That's why I like games like Join Squad, where you basically choose a role and then you have a leader and you just follow him. He gives you direction, but you also know what to do. So you're not like, I don't know if I'm the, you know, first mate or the you know, deck boy. Okay, you do choose. Okay, good. That makes more sense.
Now we get to the point that I was trying to making earlier, like the 37 classes, and they all had strange names and stuff.
Like Game Company.
Yeah. Story tip number 7: use cliches judiciously. And that's the thing, you know, it's like a lot of new game developers have a thing where they want to make something unique that you've never seen before, but it's also important to use things that normal people that aren't like me, because they're normal, can recognize and appreciate. So when you're making a game or making a story, you need to have some sort of familiar element. You can't just like have a mission and have everything be totally different than anything anyone has ever seen, because then people are going to struggle with understanding the story or relating to the UI or relating to the character or anything. It'll just be bleh.
Yeah, we like familiarity. That's why I think also the hero's journey and it's kind of built is because we're familiar with it and we know what to expect at what points. Even movies is kind of built around that. From even point of view of structure is what I mean. Like then we want to hear about, like when you even go out and look for things, you might be like, I want a game about the Second World War.
Yeah.
You can't search even for something that is not familiar to you. I wanted that game about Bob de Boob, which had the 54 classes. No, 37 classes.
Yeah. Yeah, Hearthstone says, are you saying in a sense don't over innovate? Yeah, I mean, like, let's say you're at a point now where I don't know what's really overused. Zombies are super overused, and survival games. Maybe flip it around and be a zombie that has to survive in a world full of humans.
A robotic zombie.
Or a robotic zombie, or a clumsy zombie, nimble, like kind of like what was the main name of the movie? 30 days later, 20 days later,
28 days. Yeah.
28 days later, they kind of flipped the whole zombie thing around and made zombies super fast. So like, it's okay to use things that we know, but maybe change it up a little bit, make it a bit more novel. You don't have to make sparkling vampires, please.
Yes, you do.
It's too late for that now, but I wish they didn't. But see what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to use cliches, but try to change them up a little bit. Have a clumsy ninja. Oh wait, that's a mobile that was hugely popular. So you see, like, that's what people do. You don't have to reinvent the plate every time you make something new, because then people won't understand it. It's like when you see the MMOs and it's like, there are 4 classes. You have the strong and brute flippity floppies. Yeah, those are orcs. And then you have the small but stout engineering race of the Fnigifnabs. That's a dwarf. No, it's a Fnibifnab. And these are the tall, slender, nimble, long Ublebebs. That's an elf. Look, do you want to play my game or not? I think I would rather not.
So this probably goes well with the lens of novelty. So you do, which is kind of, even the lens of novelty mentions the familiar, right? So it says here, the lens of novelty, different isn't always better, but better is always different. And I think that is a good quote to add to this. To ensure you harness the power of motivation, of novelty, ask yourself these questions. What is novel about my game? Does my game have novelties throughout or just at the beginning? Do you have the right mix of novel and the familiar? When the novelty wears off, will players still enjoy my game? So again, remember, different isn't always better, but better is always different.
Yes.
And that's the kind of idea that, don't make it just different because you think it's novel. Is the idea of that quote. So if you just change things up for trying to make novel, that's not the correct. Try to rather make something better that's already familiar. Very, very philosophical here now. But I think that is something that it's not easy. You just know when you have it and when you probably don't have it. And if you're a thing of, Lady Graf. Her name is not Lady Graf, though.
No, she is Cecilia Garcia. I'm not sure where the surname came from, because not Garcia, and neither is mine. Maybe she was married or something before she met me. I'm not sure.
Maybe that's her real name. You just didn't know it.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure I know her real.
Yeah. Lady Graf is a night elf.
Yeah.
You just that's why you can't see her hands. She's actually has a
She's
mobile phone.
typing. Typing in the background. Ooh.
Ooh.
She says, just promoted your stream on my Facebook. Hope more people will watch you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, madam.
Sir.
Sir, madam.
You've seen her.
I know. I'm just used to saying sir, not madam. I am weird.
Okay.
Golly from
right.
hell. Welcome to the company Game Devs and cheers for the follow. It's good that we have people who keep us hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is kind of
I
also, yeah.
agree.
Why don't share
Thanks
my
for
stream on
following.
Facebook? Because then my mom would be here. And I don't think we want my mom here. I'm very sure you want my mom here, but I'm very sure after she is here, you don't want her here anymore. Yeah. Did you assume Lady Graf's gender? Triggered. Exactly. I assumed her gender.
Lilybite, it's not so much about assuming. She's been on stream a couple of times. Like, she'll bring cake or something, or she'll like say stuff is difficult, and then I'll switch places with her, and then she can do some drawing, and I'll food or something during stream, and she'll draw a tree on the wrong layer and almost delete my stuff. But it's fun, and we're laughing. Haha.
Yeah. I guess we assume everybody's gender because the only way to not assume somebody's gender is to actually check out their gender. And I have never done that. Like, for the purpose of checking someone's gender. Sir, would you go in and remove your clothes? And, No, just kidding.
Wait, what? What? The clothes? No, that's not happening.
We need to know your gender.
Moving on.
Exactly.
The lens of story? Is that where we're at?
Exactly.
Okay.
Should I can read it.
Yeah, sure, you do that.
So the lens of story. So it's kind of to bring together the whole chapter. So it says, ask yourself these questions: does my game really need a story? Why? Why will players be interested in this story? How does the story support the other parts of the Tetrad? Aesthetics, technology, gameplay. Can it do a better job? How do the other parts of the Tetrad support the story? So Tetrad again is the whole, like, what he says is the cornerstones of making a game. So how do other parts of Tetrad support the story? Can they do a better job? How can my story be better? Was it here actually? Was it in this chapter where he discusses the whole thing that it might be in the next. I'm not 100% sure where it was, but because it says, like, does my game really need a story? Why? I find that a lot of time, especially for myself, is that I find that my game doesn't necessarily need a story, but I still want to create a story for myself because it then helps me make more consistent choices within the world because I have a better understanding how the world works. And a lot of movie makers and other game makers do the same thing, that they make this whole intricate world, but they might not be talking about it at all in the game. It just drives the game. Oh my god, you're trying to strip us of our clothing? Yes, I'm trying to steal your clothing. How did you know?
Yeah, you're mean like that.
The nude policy. Is there a nude policy? There is.
Yeah.
No, there's not a nude policy though. Depends. There's streamers that are quite nude.
The pants.
Like the body painters. You just have to cover strategic areas.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if you have anything in it. Actually, this lens kind of feels like unnecessary. I kind of feel like it's only.
I've already moved on to the next chapter. story and game structures can be artfully merged with indirect control. And this is a chapter I really enjoy.
Yeah, same.
Basically, in short, it talks about the feeling of freedom, and then it talks about a lot of methods of indirectly controlling your player in the right direction for your story. And this basically has to do with making sure that your player feels free to do what they want, but then it talks about these indirect control methods, and there are, I can't remember how many, 4, 5, 6. Let's see. There are 6 different that we're going to cover really fast. But first, we need to talk about the Lens of Freedom.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. The Lens of Freedom, lens number 71 in first edition.
And 79 in second.
A feeling of freedom is one of the things that separates games from other forms of entertainment. To make sure your players feel as free as possible, ask yourself these questions. When do my players have freedom of action? Do they feel free at these times? When are they constrained? Do they feel constrained at these times? Are there any places I can let them feel more than they do now, feel more free than they do now? Are there any places where they are overwhelmed by too much freedom? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we even discussed it a bit earlier already, this whole idea of freedom. It's kind of why I also think that, or not only I, a lot of, it's generally considered that taking away that freedom from the player is bad. Like, again, saying that if the cutscene kind of forces you to walk up to a statue that you didn't want to go. And this chapter kind of covers that in a way that there is, how to say, you could even call them, I guess, psychological ways to influence the player to do what you want.
Yeah, they call them indirect control methods in the book.
Exactly. And the indirect means that you are controlling parts of the experience, I guess, but so basically you have constraints, and we can go directly through that into the first indirect control method, constraints. So
I would put it this way, that what ties all the indirect control methods together is that all of them help the player in the direction that you as a want them to go, or make choices that you want them to make, but they all do it in a way that makes the player not feel forced. So they feel like they still have the freedom to make the choice that they make. And as you were saying, one of them is constraints.
Exactly.
Constraints.
It's kind of like it's kind of like you actually, the thing is, a lot of the time you actually don't have any freedom. You just have the perceived freedom. So for example, the first one, the indirect control method number 1, constraints. So here's 2 examples that he shows straight in the up top, which is like, let's say we have 2 different requests. There's 2 ways of asking the same thing. So let's say I'm asking Tasty, pick a color.
There's so many options.
Yeah, so if I ask just pick a color and I just leave it blank, he could say any color. He could say, red, blue, or he could say like, burgundy, or, anything. He could say anything that's a color. That means, and there's like tens of thousands of, I don't know how many millions there are colors, but there's a lot.
Puke yellow.
Puke yellow, exactly. The yellow. But then, for example, if I ask the same question, pick a color and choose from A, red, B, blue, or C, green.
I still feel like I have a choice. I can pick between 3 colors. And let's say you never ask the first one, pick a color, and then no option. If I'm faced with the option of picking red, blue, or green, I still feel like I have a choice. But the constraints of these 3 options make it a lot easier for the game designer to control me in a direction that they want to send me. So that's basically the essence of constraints.
Yeah. Of
that control method.
and this is actually something they also in the open world. We'll cover even more, maybe better examples of this, but in the next upcoming methods. But for example, when you're in open world and you land in the middle of, a parking
Of an
lot,
open space.
an open space. Usually they are not that open. They might have 3 streets you can walk down. And that limits it also from a design point of view, that the player can't just, like if you would just be in an open field, he could walk in any direction in the world and land up at the, well, actually they do that in Zelda a bit. When you're at the cliff, you actually could fly straight to the boss, which is interesting. But anyway, they still kind of generally know, then at least this is one method. Like if you have 3 streets that are maybe even pointing in different directions, they still know that the player will choose one of those 3 streets, and that's physically the only ones he can go through. But the player still conceives he could go any direction, he could go anywhere. But the truth is he can only go down one of those 3.
Yeah.
So, and then
Yeah,
that way you still
that's
have a
basically
feeling.
the case of the indirect
Yeah.
control. It's when you give the player some options that seem appealing, which is probably going to guarantee that they pick one of those things.
Exactly. It limits it still. Um,
Hmm.
I think if I remember correctly, and this is again, of course, there's like Minecraft that doesn't do it at all. But I think this is mostly in concern to story, for example. If you have something you need to tell the player, there is cases where you can just drop him up in an open field, because the options are, what am I gonna punch? Well, there's always something around to punch, so you can always build your fort and then start building your castle, and then it basically is more of an emergent storytelling. That way the designer didn't sit there being like, oh, how am I gonna tell him about the princess? Actually, Minecraft has an interesting thing. It does have an ending, and I would argue that it's almost impossible to know that ending without watching any kind of let's play or wiki pages. So even those are the ways he tells players how to get to the ending. I don't know if you played enough, Tasty, to comment, but I don't think there's anything in the game that tells you that how to get
I
to
don't
the.
know what ending is in a game. I don't finish games.
I don't either. This is why we're friends.
Yeah.
But
I finished the story in Destiny, but it was only like 8 hours of gameplay.
only 8 hours. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's a whole work day. I feel exhausted already.
Yeah, I did it over the course of 3 days.
You could finish Destiny 2 during the stream and still
Yeah.
have time to listen to us.
Yeah, I could finish Destiny 2 during one of my own monologues.
But yeah, that's the whole point, that you don't necessarily remove the feeling of freedom, even if you just present limited options.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next so we don't spend too much time. So,
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah,
explain
the
this?
indirect control method number 2 is goals. And basically, if you wanted the player to do a specific thing, then you present them with a goal that is interesting or makes sense to them. In the book, there's an example of like people couldn't like pee properly, because that's the thing apparently that men do. Like they'll go to the toilet and pee everywhere. So they etched like a little black fly at the bottom of the urinal, and men would kind of try to aim for that, because apparently our brains are hardwired to want to hit things with our pee rays. Yeah, that's why you come here. It's for the pee and the poop, apparently, to this stream. It's not my stream. It's Bjorn's poopy stream.
Yep, I brought the
And
poop
pee.
here.
Yeah. So that's one way of indirectly controlling
Is that what graph
the
means in
player.
Danish?
A graph?
It means poop.
It does. Yeah. Tasty
That's
poop.
then.
No. Lilybite says, Tasty just made me spit Pepsi everywhere.
Pepsi, get out of here!
If there had been like a fly or a bowl, you would have had more success with your Pepsi spitting.
Yeah,
And
you
you're
have a
welcome.
goal. You wouldn't have hit your screen or your keyboard. You would have hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a simple. Sorry,
It's an
Emily.
indirect control method. Give people a goal and they go for the goal. And that's not saying that everyone will do it, but maybe like 90%, and maybe 90% is good enough.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think the fly example is a bit because basically we'll discuss this later. It's more of a visual design kind of thing, and all of
yeah,
these have some kind of visual element or some way of communicating it. But I also like his example of how he starts is that if a player has two doors they can go through, I don't really know which one they're going to enter. As the game design, you don't know which one. But
yeah,
if you give them a goal of go find all the bananas, and then one of the doors clearly has bananas behind it, I can make pretty good guess about where they're going to go. So it
it
doesn't need to,
depends on what's on the other door.
exactly. Maybe there's blueberries, and then you're
Put
like,
chocolate.
the game designer might be trying to trick me into thinking that the bananas are behind the door with the bananas behind it.
Yeah, or they'd be like, maybe the goal says I need to pick up bananas, but this door has chocolate. I want chocolate. So,
I think you have something against
constrain
bananas.
yourself.
We learn something about Tasty every day.
Yeah, I like bananas.
Hey, Dabooks.
Yeah, Lilybite says, I would look at that door and go, that's too easy. It's a trap. Get an axe.
It's a trap. Dabooks, thank you for the follow and welcome to the company of
Oh.
game devs. Cheers.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think that's a better example because that's a non-visual. Like you could have a text saying, "Find the bananas," and of course the bananas ourselves are visuals, but you could do other stuff like saying like, "Find the sheriff," and then you're quite sure that he's gonna go walk around town trying to find the sheriff's office, which might then be marked by the word sheriff. So that way you can have some control. Then again, he might also be like, "Ooh, look at the fly," and then run off and try to hit it with his pea. I've had that happen in many games, and I actually try to do that a lot when I'm playing games. When I'm testing them, is that I usually I like to go left when I know the game designer wants me to go right, because I want to see what happens. Did they
Yeah.
think about that?
And if you
I
want
will
to see
then go
what happens
back.
when
Sorry.
if you want to see what happens when Bjorn plays your games, you should submit it for Tuesday's game feedback stream.
Exactly.
If you want to see him go left when you wanted him to, you submit your game.
That's the only thing I do. That's my way of analyzing.
Yeah.
And the sheriff gets shot by the player. Exactly. But it is interesting. A lot of the time, there is actually a good game designer always tries to lead the player. Of course, sometimes, but the game designer still needs to have ways of handling when the player does something that they don't want to. Anyway, let's go forward. The next one is the interface.
Yep. And again,
Yep.
we're primarily talking about the physical interface here. I mean, the virtual interface does it too, but they give a really good example. Rockstar game has a plastic guitar as the physical interface, like the controller. Then this gives the player the idea that he's supposed to play the guitar. Whereas if you'd given them a game controller, they might think, okay, I can play the guitar, but how do I crowd surf or jump or smash the guitar on the loudspeaker and stuff? So another way of indirectly controlling your player is to design your interface around it. If you have a pirate ship with cannons and a steering wheel that I don't know what it's called, and it doesn't matter. But if you have those things, then the players will seek these cannons and the steering wheel, and that's the activities they're going to play. They may not think, where's my sword? Where's the button to pull out my sword? You don't need to do that. Both of your hands are occupied on the cannon.
Yeah, and that's and then in the virtual aspect, there's of course also things, but they're more minor. Like, well, if I put Tasty in GTA 5 in on a small bike, he's probably gonna do
Tank.
different things than if I put him into a tank. I'm very sure that if I put Tasty in a tank, he will try to run over a building and fail.
I will seek out a singing group of Hare Krishnans because that's what I do in Grand Theft Auto.
and with a bike he might do different types of actions. So of course I would even say that the interface, because then you have also the whole interface of actually the HUD, which could also be like the map, for example. Like if you have if you put a go for the player, like they do in Zelda, you see on the map where to go, and then you go in that general direction. That's actually the only way in Zelda you know where to go and get more of the story. Like I said, you could just go straight to the end boss too.
Yeah.
Hey, my pin is all. It's all. Welcome to the company of game devs. Cheers for the follow. It's all. Yeah, we have all the Enuses here.
Yes. It's actually Mipe-een. Mipe-een Isis Mole. You're reading it totally wrong.
Exactly.
Welcome to the stream, Mipe-een Isis Mole.
I don't want to go to an ISIS mall. That sounds terrible.
Oh, yeah, true.
Actually, it's kind of interesting that he had to put an extra a letter there just because he's probably already taken. It's the funny thing when you try to make a trap for the streamer, and then you actually have to add 4, 5, 6, 8 at the end or something because so many other people have thought about the same joke.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the first Mipe-een Isis Mall we have here on the stream. Welcome nonetheless, and I hope you'll stay.
Exactly.
For the poop and pee jokes.
Yeah, we have a lot of poop and pee jokes here.
Yeah.
But that kind of leads in, like, again, like you could use a map like they did that, and you could even put a virtual map on the ground like they do in, didn't they do it in GTA 2? I don't remember. Or was that in the minimap? But
I don't recall. I mostly looked for hard.
You cut out, so we don't know what you're looking for, but that's good.
Maybe it's better. I think it's good. I mostly looked for people to run over. Is basically what I was saying.
I think you were playing Carmageddon, not GTA 5, but
I played both, and I played them the same way. From inside the car, the other way top down. But essentially, I played them the same way.
Oh, you can play.
Enter vehicle, look for squishy targets, run them over, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and after 1 hour, get bored and then quit game.
That's where you and I differ. Because I can literally play these kinds of games for hours and have fun. I don't get bored. That's the beauty.
So I just need to make a game called People Mower 2000, and then
it doesn't even have to be people. I mean, I'm perfectly happy playing. I mean, I'm perfectly happy playing a sphere that mows down other spheres. There's just something that inherently interests me. It's like the primal thing of like just surviving onslaughts of things that are coming at me and shooting it.
You should go to CERN. They have a Hadron Collider. That is like high velocity things colliding with things that you might enjoy a lot for like days.
Can I shoot it?
Maybe you can go and ask.
There's a game I play on Steam. Remember you looked at the game Judge at one point?
No.
Which was like a top-down shooter. It was spelled JYDD.
Oh, yeah. Judge. Now you... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've played both of those games, Lily. And they basically specialize in that. The survival shooter top-down kind of thing, where you shoot a bunch of stuff that comes at you and avoid the bullet, grade your stuff. And I love that genre. I absolutely love it, and I play it for hours and hours and hours. And I'm perfectly fine switching from one game to the other just because the aesthetics change. As long as the upgrade system is there and it gives me freedom of playing with different styles of weapons.
Yeah, I played Carmageddon also a long time without like just mowing people down, so I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But I think also the GTA 5 other game modes are also very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Especially the multiplayers. Surprising. But then let's go to the visual design. So
Yeah.
basically, this has also again to do with gestalt, grouping, negative space, all that stuff. You can actually lead the eye, and because you can lead the eye, you can also lead the attention where the people will go. So, for example, he
Yeah.
has a picture here, where, as you can see, you'll probably in the above picture look at the triangle, and in the bottom one, you might look at the ball first, but you'll be interested in the outlier, like those things in the outside in the edges. Whereas you're not at all interested in the edges on the top picture, and that's
Yeah.
all kind of, you probably say in chat, well, I didn't do that. Well, most people will. Like, you have a 90% accuracy of knowing where people will look. The same thing he then uses as the example in their flying carpet simulator, where first they wanted people to go up there into the center to that throne, and people were just flying around looking at the murals in the roof, and then they put a red line in the middle, and then suddenly everybody flew up there to the center, which was the Sultan. You can't really see it here, but just because you put that visual line, your eye kind of follows up and see where it ends up, and then that becomes the pivotal point which you want to look at, kind of thing.
And it's interesting because in a game where you can do what you want, their experience was that painting a red line on the floor was enough to just make people not want to fly around. Obviously, some people would, but 90%, as he says in the book, 90% of the people would look at the red line and fly and follow that and talk to the character in the game. And later they figured out, okay, well, if there are multiple people, we want to split out. And so they drew a line that splits out. And that basically solved their problem. Something
So
simple
splitting
as a line.
Yeah, and I even as a player, I feel a lot of time I see stuff like this. I see the red line, and because I'm a game designer, I know that what they're trying to do, which is lead me to where I'm supposed to go. Which is, again, doing a search so I don't get lost. But also, that gives me confidence. I usually then explore everything else around in that room because I know that the cutscene or the thing will happen when I go to that, where the red line ends. Which also kind of gives me freedom of, I'm in control on what I'm experiencing. Versus the reverse, where I don't know where I'm going to go. I have to look at everything. And then in the end, I might either never find it and get frustrated, or maybe I didn't want to go forward from this place yet. Because sometimes I even, as a player, enjoy looking at things and looking at the architecture of something. Because a lot of the time, the games are super beautiful.
Yeah. Agree has a question, says, my question is, why did they want them to go there right away? What did they have against exploration of the surrounding area? And my guess is because it was a theme park virtual reality ride where there are probably 1 million screaming people in line to try it. It's probably either constrained by time in the sense that after 5 minutes or something, the ride is over, or it's constrained, by the fact that if they spend half an hour in there, then it's not going to be a good ride. People pay money to try it. So they kind of want to sell an experience, and they also want to make sure that everyone has kind of a similar experience so that they're not, spending 3 hours in the bathroom looking at their reflection, clicking the button, going, I want to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum. That's how I played Duke Nukem.
Yeah,
and then stand in front of the mirror and be like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
But that's also the thing, let's say if they never found that they had to go there, then the actual ride person, who handles, needs to come and tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, you need to go there now. And that kind of ruins, and you feel shit then. You're like, I'm now a crappy player, that the whatever they're called,
I failed the tutorial.
Yeah, basically feeling. So, that they needed assistance. Another thing, there's nothing pulling it away. Like I said, there's nothing that, as long as it visually looks good, if the red line is obnoxious compared to everything else, that's a different thing. But if you can make it part of the architecture, that it leads the people's eyes and lead them to go the right direction, it's always going to be a better experience. Because, again, if you're inclined to explore, it doesn't take away that possibility. You still have the freedom to explore, like I explained. That I usually a lot of the time enjoy that because I then know where to go once I'm done exploring. So it removes that whole thing like in old adventure games where you just have to click everything to know what to interact with. You're like, maybe I can interact with the parrot. Oh, I can. Maybe I can give him the bubble gum. No, he can't eat bubble gum. Well, let's try to put soap in his face. Oh, that's logical. That worked. Ooh. And then I'm experimenting for 5 hours there. So again, it's not. I actually find that a lot of times it's not only about. Again, it's indirect control that's invisible to the player, but also for the smart player, it gives them control over their own experience, and then it doesn't become indirect anymore. But.
Agree says, from a gameplay perspective, what is wrong with sitting in the bathroom for 3 hours? And there's nothing essentially wrong with it if the player chooses to be there and, if there weren't a line behind you that wanted to go try the virtual reality or so from a gameplay perspective, it's all about entertainment, like, we were talking about earlier, I think, about
let's say
what do we enjoy to do.
But if this wasn't here, like this game here wasn't, didn't have these red lines, and there's a toilet here, right? What's the difference of putting the red lines here and then having the toilet? The player can still walk up to the toilet and be there for like 3 hours. The game's not going to force them forward. What it does visually is playing it smart, that knowing that if I'm just sitting in the toilet for laughs and laugh with my friends, whatever the reason is, when I want to go forward with the game, I know that red line is the place I need to go to get forward. So I'm not sitting there being like, I'm at the toilet because I don't know where to go. This game is crap. They don't know anything. Like a lot of time, when players have that type of bad experience, it is because game designers or level designers or both of them don't know how to build these kind of indirect controls in the game, that they either make it too apparent where it's not anymore indirect for most players, like where it's like, again, taking like controller and like moving them on a rails so they can't then it's stupid, because then it's like taking away control from me. Suddenly I can't control my character, something else is controlling it, it's on rails. That's a kind of bad way to do it, instead of using this kind of psychological thing. The other way would be to not have this at all, and then have your player being like, oh, this is like the 3rd hour I'm trying to find where to go. I don't know where to go. So I just think this is smart, and it's something that you learn over time to do.
Yeah. I mean, you saw it in a lot of the for NES, or the arcades where, let's say it's a 2D side scroller and you're beating mobs up or something, and when you're done beating them up, there's a blinking sign that shows the direction. I mean, it's not forcing the player to move forward, but it is essentially saying this is the way we want you to walk when you're done looting stuff or you're done whatever. Some games allowed you to go backwards, and some games locked the scroll so you actually couldn't go backwards. Those were mostly arcade games because, again, with the arcades, you want the players to not faff about too much. You don't want the players to spend hours in an arcade game for 1 quarter or however much it costs to play, which is why I think a lot of the arcade games did have a locked on the scroll axis. So once you move forward, you can't go back. Then there's an arrow telling you move forward. But it's an indirect way of controlling the player's direction, where they're going through your story.
Exactly. Yeah? Luckily, we don't have to do that much more, where we're monetizing players' times. But it is a real thing still in amusement parks.
Yeah.
So
and it's a real thing in mobile too, for other reasons, but you are still monetizing the player's time by having their minutes cost or their turns cost X amount of energy that regenerates over time. That's a way of controlling content that your player can consume.
True, but I feel like a lot of smart free-to-play games, we shouldn't get, this is a very deep discussion, but I think
Yeah.
there's recently a lot of new games have found other ways to monetize than having like, oh, there is, especially the one which was like, it takes 5 hours to build a castle, but you can get it instantly for 2 diamonds that are premium currency. And then,
Yeah, those are the time management.
yeah,
They are slowly fading out. I mean, they're still popular, but they're not as popular as they have been.
exactly.
And we're seeing rewarded ads taking over a lot of that, where the player will reach a stop and then they will opt in to watch an ad, and they can continue from there after watching the ad, and they will get something in return for that.
Yeah, it's
We're
still
seeing a lot
monetizing
more of
time, but maybe less, more indirectly.
Yeah.
Arcade culture still has remnants in modern games, like having a finite number of lives, and when you run out, the game over. Yep, true. Then again, I've seen less and less of those. Whereas a lot of games even have infinite lives, but it resets every time, like
Yeah,
roguelike games.
or infinite continues, etc., etc.
But I understand there's still lives and things like that. But I
Yeah.
would say, like, how many have that anymore? Like, when is the last time I played a game with lives that wasn't an old game?
Or wasn't like a
Remake.
based on old games,
You cut out
arcade games. Oh, I just said a lot of the games tend to be arcade games.
Yeah. For example, Mario Odyssey finally took out 1-ups and Lowe's coins instead. Yeah. And that's already based Sonic style. Well, they're all based on that old game, right? Like Tasty was saying, they're basically trying to cater for the people like who played Sonic back in the day. Like it's a sad story that we still like a lot of those games. Biggest audience is the people who played them back 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. I'm not saying they don't exist,
I
by the
haven't
way.
played them.
We're not arguing they don't exist, by the way. It's just an interesting discussion about what are a totally new IP that uses it today. And I'm surprised thinking that I can't really think of any. Yeah, actually, I can't think of any. Anyway, you were gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I haven't played the new Super Mario Odyssey, but as far as I understand it, you collect coins and then you spend the coins to unlock stuff, costumes, something. I saw a video about some guy who like skipped some content, picked up a seed, climbed the seed that turned into a plant and got into the skies, rode a roller coaster, got a bunch of coins, and then landed at the bottom and could pick up the seed again and redo it. And he was just doing that over and over to make 180 coins per minute or some crap like that. And then he was like, yeah, I can finally buy the skeleton suit or something like that. So in a way, it seems like they've kind of taken some of the difficult elements out of it and making it slightly more open world, I guess. I don't know. I haven't played it, but it looks cool. I like the thing with the hat and getting abilities from wherever the hat lands. Like if it lands on a monster, you control the monster and get its abilities. I like that a lot. Gives the player a lot of sense of freedom.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And I think it also creates a lot of emergent gameplay because there's a lot of ways to solve a problem. Because how to play the game. There's not just one way to solve a certain scenario. I haven't played it yet. I need to play it. I haven't bought it yet. I need to buy it.
I haven't bought
That's
it
the
either.
first step. But
I haven't played my Switch for like ages.
Yeah, me neither. Haven't had time to play anything, to be honest. But if I played something, it would be Switch or PC.
Yeah, we should do like a Divinity 2 RPG session where we try to destroy the world. Bjorn and Tasty destroy the world in Divinity 2.
By the way, guys, if you think Pong was the first game, you are sorely mistaken. The first game is several thousand years old.
Yeah, but like the first video game.
Exactly. But game design and game mechanics were invented thousands of years ago.
I'm not 100% sure, but I guess the first computer/video game was made on I think it's called an oscilloscope, one of those things that shows light. And
Yeah.
it was a game with it kind of seemed like Pong with like a thing that traveled back and forth or something. And I'm pretty sure that was developed in the 60s.
Question: Can there ever be too many ways to solve a given in-game problem? I don't think so, but as long as it's not confusing. Again, like we discussed earlier, if you give too much freedom, like, it might also be bad. You want to still constrain it to some options so you know what your options are. He actually uses a very nice example, and it might be later on, where he said that he used to work at a candy store, and they had like, what was it, 67 or 90, I think. Was it 90? Do you remember?
They had many. I think it was 64 different.
Yeah, so 64 different flavors. And then the people would come to him and ask, like, oh, what flavors do you have? And then he, like, said, as an example, he said that, we have 64 different flavors. Which one?
And then
what
he
would
would
you
start
like?
to name them all.
No, that was not the first question. He tried different things. Like, he first just said 64 the flavors. What do you want? And then people are like, well, peppermint. No, I don't want peppermint. Ugh. Like, then they start guessing, and then it just became like they gave up and get frustrated. Like, if I have to guess, for example, if there's 100 different ways to solve an enemy, you still would have to have an idea of how to do it. So you don't have to guess still, because like, I'm gonna punch him. No, wait, what if I kicked him? No, wait, what if I? So, anyway.
Reuthamus, welcome. Reuthamus says, what are the topics joined and confused as to what we're discussing? Right now we're talking about indirect controlled methods for controlling your player in a game in the direction that you want them to go. And this could be leading them on in a story or leading them to a specific point. And so far we've covered constraints, which is what we just talked about right now. Yeah. With like, instead of presenting your player with 1 jillion options or like unlimited options, limit it, put constraints on it, have like 3 or 5 or whatever options for them to do. The second one is goals, which is like show them what you want them to do. Interface is the third one, which is like, design your interface or your controller in a way that makes the player not have to guess what it is that you want them to do. And the fourth one is visual design. Am I cutting out?
Nope.
Oh, okay. No. The fourth one was visual design.
No, you are cutting out. Damn it!
Curse you! Okay, so you take over. Visual design, fourth one, with the lines and the stuff.
Yeah, so visual design, like basically you can control where people look again. So if you look at this picture, most people will look here just because of how your brain works, basically. And in here, you probably will glance at this, but then be interested in these things, whereas you won't be interested in the edges in this picture. So, I think it's because it cuts things in half. You're like, oh, what's behind this corner? It's kind of in our nature, in general. Sure. Of course, again, there's exceptions, but we're not interested in exceptions. We're more interested in general rule, because we can't make a perfect experience for everybody. Yeah, this is definitely a really good book.
We've reached the fifth one.
Yeah, fifth one. Yeah.
Characters. Yeah, the indirect control method number 5 is through characters.
Yep.
And basically you see this a lot in, for instance, MMOs. If you want your players to move in a specific direction, you have a character that gives them a quest that tells them to pick up something over in that direction, and then they run in that direction, and then they meet more people that lead them on to other places. Or it could be a story-based game where 2 characters talk, and whatever it is that they're talking about is interesting to you, so you feel compelled to relate to these characters, and they kind of lead you on through the story. So that's indirect control method number 5, like making characters in your game that can move the story forward. And
I'm very sure there is other ways that is not mentioned here. I've seen many of them. But I think the general rule here is not to necessarily be like, oh, these are the 5 only methods. It's more about thinking about how can you indirectly, without removing freedom from the player, direct them in the right direction, because they still need that. And if you can do it in a very elegant way, where you again are not removing any type of freedom, and the player doesn't notice, you've done a good job as a game designer.
Yeah.
So that leads to the lens 80, the lens of help. I don't know.
Wait, so you don't have music in yours?
No. Oh, yeah, I do, but it's after the lens of help.
Oh, okay. I don't have the lens of help, so you do that one.
Okay. No, you read it. Guess what it says. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Lens number 80, lens of help. If you don't know what to do, ask Bjorn for help. Bjorn, I don't know what to read.
Oh, no.
Help.
Oh, you got
Help
it right.
me, help me,
you know?
Obi-Bjorn Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Sup, Mark?
Help, Obi-Bjorn Kenobi.
Sup, Mark? Welcome. And also, sup, Ryu? So it says, deep down, everyone wants to be helpful. To channel this helpful spirit toward engaging gameplay, ask yourself these questions. Within the context of the game, who is the player helping? Can I make the player feel more connected to the characters who need help? Can I better tell a story of how meeting game goals helps someone? How can the helped character show their appreciation? That's the whole lens. So it's a very weird lens. It's basically about, again, from the method 5, the characters that, people want to inherently help. Like, for example, in Mario, you're helping, I guess, the princess, you're saving her. And then how does she show gratitude? Well, running off with Toad. Oh my God. I quit.
She doesn't run off, does she? She doesn't run off.
No, she's carried off.
She's carried off by Bowser. Toad is like the little guy with...
No. She's carried off by Toad. Toad is always there. He's laughing at us. He's the real... I bet you he's the real mastermind.
Toad is Jar Jar Binks.
No, he's the real... Jar Jar Binks is also the real mastermind.
That's why I say Toad is him.
Yeah. Jar Jar Binks is coming back in the next movie, I heard.
Yeah, he's a Sith Lord or something. I heard that too. I'm not trying to ruin...
This
is Disney.
The Sith Lord. But I don't know what to... For the lens feels weird. I don't really know what to say about it. It's kind of like, think about how the player wants to help other characters, but I don't really... Personally... Well, I have the feeling that the characters thank me for helping them, and of course that's a motivator in the game, but I never seen it as indirect. Like, maybe I've seen, like, again, like, oh, I'm walking in Witcher along the road, and then on the side of the road there's a witch drowning in the, a swamp, and then I'm like, well, I guess go help her, and then suddenly a quick time event of orcs jump on me and try to kill me, and then I'm swooped into some side quest I didn't want to go to, but I don't know. Is there any other? Like, I don't know is that the whole idea of that? And that's very specific compared to the other stuff.
Well, I mean, if you're playing a game where, let's say, you have to look after a specific character, if that character is feeling threatened, then you would indirectly be feeling like I need to move or I need to pull this character to safety. So in that way, it's indirectly helping you.
Yeah, I understand that. I just don't understand why it's a lens.
Yeah.
That's what
I think he probably needs stuff to the second edition, and he was like, I'll put this in.
Yeah, just get the first edition. Just get the first edition, because second edition, he just adds lenses because he needs to fill the pages.
Maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't know. It's a good lens. Maybe, that's the thing. Like I said, this book helps mostly when you are already designing a game and designed a couple of games. And then this might be a problem I just have never faced in the game yet. Like, I've seen it in game, but I've never seen it as a like the power of it as a game designer. Maybe that's why I don't understand it as much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Music, indirect control method number 6. Are we there?
Subcontext. Yep.
Hi, Crytex. Yeah, so I think that one's a little bit vague, but it is. I think music also talks about sound effects because I mean I've done that in some. If I want the player to not shoot the power ups, then I play like a brr sound when they shoot the power ups.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can shoot them. I mean, it's not gonna. I mean, you have the freedom to shoot whatever you. But if you shoot the power ups, you're
just
not
forced to listen to this really bad sound effect.
Yeah, it's just like. But that's a way of using audio cues to tell the player that maybe that was not the best choice. But you could also use it otherwise, like the way that music affects human beings. It's like if you have fast-paced music, they will usually react. Restaurants use this a lot. Like if it's like in the middle of rush hour, they'll play fast music to make people eat faster.
Imagine if that music would be playing when you're eating. You're like,
yeah, the Star Wars.
Yeah, the Cantina song.
Yeah, I even have the same fatty fingers as one of the players that plays the instrument, except I'm not blue.
But who shot first? No, wait,
Yeah.
that was where were we? What we were talking about? Music, yeah.
We were talking about
At
music.
restaurants.
Yeah, so it's like the music in the restaurant when people need to eat fast so they can have more customers during that time. They play fast music. When they want their restaurant to look full, when there aren't that many customers, they to make people eat a little bit slower so that the restaurant looks full and it doesn't, nobody wants to go to eat at an empty restaurant except for me because there's no queue. It's probably a good thing. Why is there a fly in my soup?
Fly? Those are delicious.
Yeah, then you open your pants and you start to pee at it or something.
I
From
feel,
the urinal story about the
yeah,
thing
but I
with the
feel
fly.
bad for all the people who joined after that story, and they're just like, Tasty, you're a crazy man.
Oh, you have a point. Yeah, sorry.
Ryu is like, maybe I should watch some other stream where they don't want to pee in my soup. Anyway, but yeah, music definitely. I think music and how to say, like, music again, like positive things, even like you said, like doing a or do or something when you shoot like a power up, or then when you pick up something good. Then to the music, which kind of tells the player what is the pacing of the game. Never, I always watch.
Yeah, you could use it for stuff like let's Fortnite. The Fortnite game has the chests or caches which have super good gear, and at a distance you can kind of hear them twinkle, and that clues you in as a player. It's like you don't know it at first, but like the closer you walk towards it, the audio gets louder, and it's like, oh, it's getting warmer. So that's a way to use audio to indirectly control the direction that your player is headed.
Yeah, and I think even in my game, I know that like the music and the sounds is so important, and even in movies, like there's directors who make the whole movie without sound, and they want to make it really good before they add music specifically, not maybe sound. They still have the dialogue, because it affects the the viewer of the movie so much. And I think it's the same thing in games. It's very powerful, and that's why it's so important to think about how does it affect my player, what type of music when I play, in what location, and what's going to lead it to. Tinkling sound of peeing on the fly. Yeah, that's exactly the sound.
Yeah, he says, oh, that tinkling sound of pee on the fly totally solves discussing earlier. So
Yeah.
you see,
Exactly.
it's not always bad to talk about pee.
It's always good to talk about pee if there is occasion for it. So we get to the lens 81, for me at least, the lens of indirect control. Do you have that one?
Yep, it's called 72 in the first edition, The Lens of Indirect Control.
And 81. Do you want to read it?
Sure, I can try if my audio doesn't cut out. Every designer has a vision of
Oh, it
player
cut out. Damn
it.
Okay, let's give it one more try.
Yeah,
Because
It
you
should
have
be
a
good
nice,
now.
silky voice. Okay.
every designer has a vision of what they would like the player to do to have an ideal experience. To help ensure the players do these things of their own free will, ask yourself these questions. Ideally, what would I like the players to do? Can I set constraints to get the players to do it? Can I set goals to get the players to do it? Can I design my interface to get players to do it? Can I use visual design to get players to do it? Can I use in-game characters to get players to do it? Can I use music or sound to get players to do it? Is there some other method I can use to coerce players towards ideal behavior without impinging on their feeling of freedom? So the lens of indirect control basically has you go through each of the indirect control methods.
Yeah.
Let's
But
just
it
do
added
this.
one in the second edition.
Oh yeah. Which one is that?
No. He added one thing in that lens, which says, is my design inducing desires I'd rather the player not have? Like peeing on a fly.
Ooh.
So, fancy.
Yeah, that
smancy.
wasn't in mine. But yeah, basically the lens of indirect goes through constraints, goals, interface, visual characters, and music as indirect control methods, and kind of makes you think about those in your design. How can you make the player do what you ideally would like them to do?
Yeah.
And then we reach the section about collusion.
Yeah, first I read collusion, I read conclusion. I'm like, holy crap, this is the longest conclusion I ever read. But
Yeah,
I was
collusion.
mistaken. Collusion, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Very
collusion
good.
is
It's
it's basically
concluded
about
now.
figuring-
Yes.
well, it's
Thank you,
basically-
everybody. See you next time.
no, but it's basically about figuring out what it is that you want the player to experience, and then finding out what sort of indirect control methods can I use to make sure that the player gets the experience that I want them to. That's essentially what collusion is about.
Yeah, and that's I think a very interesting thing. Like, how can I make my game work for me, in a way?
Yeah.
So, and that's actually a thing that I think you need to be a game designer to understand that when you make a game, all the NPCs in the end and everything you put in it is on your side, and you can make them do your wishes, which means you can make them behave so it leads the player in the right direction. Well, they do this in real life, which collude. Yes, they do that too. Collude is also in real life, but it's interesting. He even
He reads on.
Yep.
He says something.
Okay. For example, college is not mandatory in the US, but it's highly encouraged and pushed by society, so people feel they should go despite of it not being forced requirement.
And
Yeah.
is that what collusion means? Because I'm not a native English speaker, so I don't know the exact
It's probably
meaning
collusion.
of collusion.
It's probably collusion, but it's not very, is that planned or not planned? I mean, is it like there is an organization that makes it so that society thinks like this? I don't know, maybe, if you're a conspiracy theorist. But what they mean here, maybe, is in the word collusion, is that actually, like, let's say you make a game with pirates. That is the thing he uses here, for example. So you can, like if it was a real pirate and you would be fighting him, he would probably only fight you. Like, his only desire would be to plunder your ship. as if you're the merchant, right?
Yeah.
Now, but because this is a game, the pirate usually has, not only is it the real, like, is he a pirate, but he's also pirate designed by the game designer, and the game designer wishes maybe the player to, let's say that the explore another region of the map. So he can basically make the pirate lose his interest in plundering and flee, and then the player would chase him, and then he can actually, the designer can, for example, a design where usually the pirates flee to, which means that they kind of collude together, the designer and the pirates, to lead. So even if from the point of view of the game, the player doesn't see it, they're colluding to lead you into a trap of kinds, I guess.
Yeah, so the game characters are colluding with the game to make an experience that is good for the player.
Exactly. Like, they don't only look, like, the enemies in a game don't only look at the interest of beating the player, they also have the interest of making an entertainment experience, you could say.
Okay, so Arcade says collusion is working together, the subject's knowledge, and usually with negative intent. So it is an odd choice of word if it means something negative originally,
True.
because here it's not an inherently bad thing. It basically just means that you start at the center island in a game and want to explore all the other islands, but the way the game helps you do that is by having characters that you fight, and then they start fleeing towards the next destination, and you beat them there, and then you see that, oh, in the distance is the place where, I want to go there and explore. You're not going to sail all the way back to where you started, because now you just saw something new.
Yeah.
So yeah, the game characters are colluding with the designer to give the player an optimal experience.
Yeah, then the other example he has is the game Facade, where you're kind of invited as a guest to an anniversary dinner or something like that, but there's only a couple there. And it uses, like, advanced AI behavior to tell a story, and every time it's a bit different. But actually, it only doesn't, not only does it try to tell a story, which is one of its goals, it also tries to follow this interest curve that's probably familiar for you guys who were here last week, I think. So it's another, goal of the thing, which, again, it's kind of, I guess, then colluding or cooperating, maybe if it's a positive, with the game designer to have this type of experience for the player. And
the two characters, the two AI characters, basically programmed to pick choices that make the tension rise or fall, so that it follows the interest curve. Yeah.
So, and not just, but they also follow the logics of course, the relationship and the story in addition. Like, they couldn't just say something that's more interesting, but then it breaks, like, the world, meaning, like, suddenly he's like, I'm an alien! And it's like, what? Where did this come from?
Yeah, he sheds his skin and starts acting all weird, and we're like, what?
The game doesn't support it. He's just clawing his face. I'm an alien, and breaks them. So that leads us.
I would play a story game like that.
Yeah, I would too. Actually, that sounds kind of good now. But then it needs to be only that type of gameplay. So we have Lens 82, the lens of collusion. Characters should fulfill their roles in the game world, but when possible, also serve as the minions of the game designer. Work towards Work towards the designer's ultimate aim, which is to ensure an engaging experience for the player. To make sure your characters are living up to this responsibility, ask yourself these questions. What do I want the player to experience? How can the characters help fulfill this experience without compromising their goal in the game world? So it's kind of difficult. You want to do the quote?
Yeah. The chapter basically finishes off with a quote by a Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu, and it says, "When the leader's work is done, the people say we did it ourselves," and that's kind of the thing that's the essence here of the indirect control methods. It's that the game designer puts in stuff that makes the player subconsciously go in specific directions, or makes the game push the story in a specific direction. And by doing so, the player should feel like they were the master of the story. They progressed it, and they are the center. And I think that's kind of the essence of the Lens of Collusion. It's like you want the player to feel like they made the choices to go there, but really, as a game designer, designed it in a way where the player wanted to go the way that you wanted them to go.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people that if you never, there's bad examples of this, and when people think about the thing we're talking about now, they usually think about the bad experiences, and that's when it fails. It becomes apparent to the player, or the NPC or AI or whatever leads them astray and leads to a worse experience. That's when you have failed as a game designer. So remember, guys, this is when the player doesn't even notice this has happened. Once you know about this, that that this is a method that you can use as a game designer, you will notice it in many, many games. Like almost every game has it in some shape or form. And maybe once you start thinking, maybe probably Destiny even has it where, you see a character in the distance and he runs off. You probably are led by the designer to go there. You could also go left and go to the place where the little character didn't run off, but then the player feels like, oh, I might miss some really interesting part of the story or something else if I don't follow that character, or other things. So the game is always, in some extent, manipulating you to do choices. So
yeah. Sibum says, so if you have a really long story, should the whole story follow that graph? Or should, for example, every area in the game follow that graph according to the book?
Oh, that graph is, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's the interest curve that we were talking about last week. Where it's like it has tension and it drops and it goes up again. And yeah, it's perfectly normal to have a large story or a game where you have it in fractals, so that you have the interest curve and then it kind of almost resets, or instead of resetting, it continues to go upwards, but it still follows the pattern. So like you'll have mini rises that go up and then down and then up and then end really high, and then you go to the next one. Bjorn is showing it. And that could be, for instance, a game where you have levels start and it seems interesting at first, and then you shoot and you learn and it gets more interesting, and then it kind of drops off in difficulty or interest, and then it finishes off with a boss. You beat it and the interest drops a little bit, and then you start the next level and you rinse and repeat. And so that's called a fractal, where the curve does that.
Yeah. So you can, if you don't understand what fractal means, it just means that this, you see, it has the same pattern within itself there in the picture. So starting off low in the beginning of the story. Oops, that's going wrong. And then it has the same, if you look at this as a whole picture, it has the same form. And when you look at the small minor parts, it has the same form in smaller scale. But that's kind of beside the point of, so the idea of indirect control is more discussing how you can, like, let's say you have an open world and you want the player to go to the Pirate King, but the players just go wherever. So because you're an open world, they all go, like, one goes to the forest, another goes to, the jungle, the third gets lost in the basement, and maybe one in like 10 goes to the Pirate King by random chance. Then there is ways, like maybe you draw a red line that leads all the way to the Pirate King, which would look really weird in an open space, but then they at least will find them. It's really bad. Maybe instead you should then think, like, maybe red line is not the right way. Maybe I should put a character and he runs off and he's like, I'm gonna tell the Pirate King, and then he runs off into the distance and you're like, I gotta stop him, and then suddenly you're following this guy, and then suddenly you're at the Pirate King. And then maybe 8 out of 10 will do that. Maybe some will be like, that's an annoying imp, and I didn't understand what he said because he has a weird dialect.
That reminds me of the like in Diablo.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know, the ones that spawn and then you beat them up and they drop gold, and if you don't beat them up fast enough, they despawn.
Oh, it's the guy with the gold. Like yeah.
Yeah,
There was
treasure
another.
imps.
Yeah, there's another game that had the map also. I can't remember who.
Yeah, I think you're
It's a Blizzard game.
Golden Axe. Oh, well, I'm talking like way back in the arcade days. You had a 2D scroll a beat 'em up called Golden Axe, and there would be these little characters that would they looked like leprechauns or something, or goblins, and they would run in while your characters were sleeping. They would steal some of your magic or something, or food, and then you'd wake up and you had to beat them up really fast, and they would eventually drop more than they stole from you. And that's a game from like the 80s or 90s. That's the first time I saw that sort of thing.
Yeah. Welcome, Sophia Remy. Yeah, I don't like eating books either. They taste nasty. Actually, this stream is really good. If you don't like books, but you still would like the knowledge of the books, you can watch the VODs of the episodes, because we cover most of the book in spoken form, like a podcast, and you can just follow along. It does help, though, having the book, because we don't go always in super detail, but we try our best to explain what the book talks about. Golden Axe. I had that on Sega Mega Drive. We should just keep mentioning like good games from the past, and people would just be like Craig-asming all over the place.
I thought that's why you brought me here to the stream.
Yeah, it is.
Because I live in the past. No. I remember stuff.
I remember stuff.
Yeah.
Now you need to we need to segue to the next, because we don't have anything to talk about anymore. So now we need to just say some other game's name that's awesome.
Arcade says I preferred Ghosts and Ghouls, or Ghosts and Goblins. I think it had two different titles depending on whether you were in Europe or the US.
I think Europe.
But yeah, that's one of these games where they did a really good job of showing the players' lives based on the character, because he wore armor at first, like a 2D platformer. He wore this armor, and then when he got hit, all fell off, and he would run around in his underpants. And that was a way to show, kind of like with Super Mario, where you eat a large, and then you get hit, and you get small again. Arcade says, couldn't you ride dragons or something? You rode these funny little. They looked kind of like birds. They had like a beak, and then a funny-looking tail. But there were also raptors or something that you could ride in.
Oh.
I remember seeing, like, I think the raptors that you could ride, they were in that. Found out that you were on a giant turtle's back at the end.
Oh.
Curiosity 95.
Yeah, welcome to the company of game devs. Cheers for the follow.
I ran out of liquids. Too many follows.
Yeah, that's why I have
I'm just faking it.
Oh, that's bad. You're drinking air.
Yeah, I'm drinking air. I'm de-air-drating.
Yeah, I can see already you're dehydrating, because you're not getting the water you need to keep this up.
And then you're teasing me with your water. You're like, I could see you need water.
Here,
Show you
open your mouth.
It's like.
Here.
Yeah. One of my favorite games.
I'm waiting.
Speaking of two.
Can you keep
I can't drink it.
Come on, I'll pour it. So
no drinking.
Actually, that Turtle's Back, I think, is from what's his face's novel, I guess.
Never Ending. Oh, Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, exactly. His whole world is.
Could be. I think originally the thing about the world being on a giant turtle, I think it's probably some mythological story from some Asian culture, maybe. I think. Arcade says, cool, thanks for replying. I feel bad raising something, then not replying to your response. What's the protocol here?
We're at protocol 42.
We are protocol-less. People say stuff. Sometimes we respond. Sometimes we miss it. Then they ask again. And sometimes we miss it again. But we try. So don't feel bad. Like if you're asking something, then if you'd missed the answer, just ask again, and I'll try to make it faster on second attempt.
Yeah. This is not streaming, sadly enough, is not a perfect form of communication, meaning that we will miss your comments. It doesn't mean we hate you. You will miss our comments. Doesn't mean you hate us. But in general, we all just hate each other, and that's just how things go.
I like turtles.
I don't think turtles watch the stream.
Oh.
I might be wrong. Our arcade might be a turtle. Who knows? Who am I to assume their species?
Yeah. How dare you? Don't you trigger people.
I am a turtle inside too.
Oh yeah, by the way, we talked about next week's chapters because yeah, because we're actually going to be doing 3 chapters next week.
Yeah, because we're flexing.
Yeah, and as a little teaser, I see that chapter 17 is called Stories and Games Take Place in Worlds. So I'm assuming that that's going to be about the world building aspect of building stories for games. And I can see some of the stuff here. It says what successful transmedia worlds have in. So I'm thinking we're going to get some tips on how to build worlds and what good worlds have in common. And then chapter 18 in my book says worlds contain characters. And I think that's going to be quite interesting as well, because it goes over like what are novel characters, what are movie characters, and what's specific to game characters. So, and maybe after next week's book club stream, people are going to go through their own games and change their game characters, like make a new lead character because they learned stuff. I hope so. I'm definitely looking forward to that part.
Yep. We had some interesting stuff already just by glancing.
Yeah, because it says like creating compelling game characters.
Like, look at this graph. Holy crap.
Show me the graph. And I have to wait 10 seconds to see it.
Look at it. It can't make you...
I'm going to look. I'm waiting for it. I'm 10 seconds behind, remember?
You're like 10 months behind.
Ooh, that's a pretty diagram.
Yeah.
I have it in my book here as well.
I know.
Yeah,
then he has another diagram that says Darth Vader, Ben Kenobi, Chewbacca, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker. These are all
diagram. The diagram that you showed there, that's actually it's from a book called Better Game Characters by Design by Catherine Isbister.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out and have a look at it. Not going to read it, but I will check it out and maybe buy it and read it at some point. And then it's a good book, it seems.
It's crap. No, it's really good. All of these, by the way, chapters has further reading at the end. So if there's this particular chapter you're very interested in, you can find more stuff in those books that go deeper. Yeah. Then the last chapter we have Worlds Contain Spaces, which is also going to be more. I think this is going to be more theoretical, which Tasty won't like so much. Maybe more for people like me who like to discuss about real versus virtual architecture. What is the meaning of life? Know how big. Third person distortion. So that's going to be more theory heavy, but it's not very, very thick.
Yeah, it says here there's going to be something about Christopher Alexander's 15 properties of living structures.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have my brain broken at that last chapter. Looking at it, it looks like it's not that bad. It's actually not that bad. So
see good. Him next stream. He's like,
yeah, next stream I'm crying.
Madusha
50. You're almost on time. We've been streaming for about 3 hours.
Yeah,
we're actually. Sorry, go on.
No, I thought you were ending, but no. No, we're just ending, like you were gonna say. That's.
Yeah, we finished talking about the stuff that we read for this week, and we are going to have a small break very soon, I think. And then it's only like a 5-minute break so that Bjorn can go out and pee and stuff because of all the water that we drank. Because every time one of you guys follow, we drink water. Or if you sub, then we drink lots of water.
And we drink vodka.
Yeah, Bjorn drinks vodka. I just drink water. So we're going to need a little break. I'm going to stay in chat, but I'll be leaving the camera so that you get full screen Bjorn-ness.
No, I don't think. Oh, okay.
Not full screen, but you know, you get like his monitor, and he will do. Are we doing art afterwards?
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of art afterwards. I'm going to continue actually working on the art for my game this stream because I'm still working on the concepts for the t-shirts.
Yep.
So there's going to be actually game dev art. Oh my God. So that's what's going to happen. But yeah, thanks, Tasty, for joining us once again. If you guys want to see this, there's going to be a VOD up instantly after the stream, so you can watch it, rewatch it. We're going to be back in a week, and we're going to read 3 more chapters if you have the book. We're now on chapter... we're going to start with chapter 19 in the second edition. And I think it was 17 in the first.
Yeah, I'm going to be reading for next week. I'll be reading this edition, chapters 17, 18, and 19.
Exactly. And but we do stream other days. Tuesdays there's gonna be the whole Bjorn plays your game day where you can submit your game and
watch Bjorn go left instead of right.
Exactly, and then you cry, and then you say, "Why is he so bad at games?" After that, I look at the top 25 trending games on Steam and try to look at all kinds of analytics, trying to figure just out what kind of games work, which ones don't, and why, and what does the stats tell us.
And as a bonus info, you get to see what makes a good game trailer and what makes a bad game trailer. Bjorn will tell you many times.
Exactly. Rage for hours.
Yeah. Why is this trailer not interesting? It's too slow. Boring, 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 boring. Scroll forward. Still boring. Stupid game.
Well, your trailer is the thing that sells your game, so make a good trailer, guys. I've been talking this so much that I bet you when Tasty is releasing his first game on Steam, he's gonna make such an amazing trailer that you know, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna oversell his game, where then the game can't compare because I haven't raged for hours and hours on his game yet. No, it's cool. But then also on Thursday we just chill. I program on the game I'm working on, which is called Witch Witch. Basically the game is about a princess trying to escape the tower, and she has magical abilities. But
and
she's
if you stay tuned, you will be able to see the game after the short break, because then Bjorn will be making graphics for it. Bjorn is a programmer and he's smart and stuff, but he is also really good at making game art. So we're still trying to figure out what Bjorn's weakness is. I think it's related to his ability to pronounce English words.
Yes,
that must be his only weakness.
That is one of my many weaknesses. My game doesn't have sound yet, so maybe that's my weakness. Who knows?
Lilybite says, Bjorn does programming? When? Well, he schedules the programming to be on Tuesdays, but I don't know. I'm not sure he does that much. It's usually like 2 lines of code, so, you know, maybe he's not really a...
You didn't see me on Thursday. I actually finished...
I did. Thursday you did loads of programming.
Yeah. And some level design, too, which wasn't programming.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for you to do some C# programming where I can learn stuff.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, that it's the whole... Because I work in Game Maker right now, I'm more used to C#, so there would be definitely more stuff I could show you guys in that. Or any object-oriented programming language. I really need to learn more art. Art is definitely my weakness. Engine language. Right now I'm working in Game Maker. It's my first and only game in Game Maker. I just started because I was interested to check out the engine. But the next, even during this while working on this game, made like the whole stream game in Unity and stuff like that. Yes, exactly what Tasty said. Yeah, but during work, I coding C# and all kinds of languages.
Yeah, you're a
Again,
professional programmer by day, professional procrastinator by stream.
Exactly. That's actually the slogan I need to have on Thursday.
Yeah, it's on your business card on both sides because you haven't made the other side yet, so you just copy paste it.
I thought there was a difference in my business cards, wasn't there? Look, it's 2 different colors at least.
Oh,
That's because
can I
I'm an
see?
artist.
Now I have to wait 10 seconds. Show me the business card.
I'm not going to
I'll
show the
show you
other
mine.
side because
Oh.
the other side has my contact information, and I'm not going to share that on stream yet.
Oh, I don't mind sharing my
Well, this has my phone number,
Oh, mine doesn't.
so I mean my email I don't care about.
This
I get
is
spam
mine.
all the time. Ooh, is it the same
Is
thing
it
on the other
readable?
side? Tasty Gear. Fecal
sorry.
design. I don't know what it says there. Fed designs. Oh, it's Danish.
Yeah, it says
That's why it's like
awesome
what?
design, awesome designs on clothes and accessories.
Oh, fecal design på
Not fecal.
dig och accessories. Tastygraph.dk, tastygraph@gmail.com. So if you have any questions to Eli, please send them to tastygraph@gmail.com. No, it's okay.
You're welcome to do that.
No?
You're always welcome. You can also tag me on Discord. Tag me at Tastygraph. Hang on a sec.
Where's the
I'll link
weakness
to
of
the Discord.
GML actually compared to C#? Well, the biggest weakness is organizing files because every method or function is its own file. You can't make a method and function in any other way, which means that if you have for every method, you will have a file or function, whatever you want to call them. It depends if you think in an object-oriented way or in a functional way. But it is. So that means I have a lot of files, so keeping everything in line is very difficult. And yeah, and if you want to talk to Tasty or me off stream, you can join our Discord, you can join Tasty's Discord. You can also click Tasty's name and drop a follow because he also streams other type of content on occasion.
Yeah, I stream art and programming and designing. The programming is mostly just for game development purposes. I use C# and the Unity engine. Sometimes I do really fast prototyping with Construct 2 or 3. And most of the time I'll do drawing with either vectors and a mouse in Adobe Illustrator or in Photoshop with a Cintiq.
Cintiq.
So yeah.
You have the 13-inch, right?
Yeah, I have a 13-inch Cintiq. So it's not huge, but it works.
But it's powerful.
Yeah. King Eric IV says how to join. If you click the link, that is the link to Björn's Discord. If you click that link, it will open up the Discord page in the browser, and it will prompt you to make a user and join us. And Discord is basically like a combination of a forum and a voice chat program, which is what we're using at the moment. Björn is seeing my face and you guys are hearing my voice through Discord at the moment. So it's kind of like Skype mixed up with forums.
I like how it just
really
cut
cool.
out when you said voice, probably. So it's like, and where you can hear my...
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like so ironic. It's like, no. So we will try Skype next time, I think.
It's not perfect. It's having issues. It works okay in the beginning as the stream goes on.
And then getting cut out. Just ironically in the right. You need to watch this, dude. This is hilarious. It's like,
No, it's not. We need a break. We need a break.
Okay, let's have a 5-minute break. We'll be back.
Out.
We'll let Tasty go, and I'll take a 5-minute break, and I will be back with some more. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.